The ambush by the lizard men had enraged you. Their brutal attack on your hunting party demanded blood. Vengeance would not wait. Under the veil of darkness, you led your goblin army in a surprise assault on the white-scale lizardmen tribe. Though they had anticipated retaliation, their defenses crumbled beneath the tide of green fury. Your goblins overwhelmed them, slaughtering the warriors and young males alike. You showed no mercy. Only the women, those smaller than goblins, and the children were spared. Among the captives, one stood out, a pale, albino lizard woman, the tribe's high priestess. Her name was Bai Ling. She possessed a rare skill, heart speech, which allowed her to communicate across species. When she spoke, her voice resonated with eerie clarity, stirring something primal in you. She was beautiful in an alien, serpentine way. For the first time since your rebirth into this world, you felt the desire to mate. And so you did. 1 month later, she bore your child, your firstborn heir. It was from her that you learned of the black scale and gray scale, tribes lurking elsewhere in the swamp. You were given a choice. 1. March on the black scale tribe. 2. March on the gray scale tribe. 3. Return and consolidate your forces. You chose the first. Your instincts were clear. Hesitation would be fatal. If the other tribes caught wind of the white scale's annihilation, they would unite against you. Strike now. Divide and conquer. The fall of the black scales. At nightfall, your goblin army surged into the black scale lands. Their warriors fell quickly, caught off guard by the ferocity of your ambush. The black scale tribe was annihilated. You again spared the non-combatants, absorbing them into the white scale remnants. The war's intensity triggered evolution among your troops. Many goblins transformed into goblin warriors, their strength rising with the blood they spilled. One of them, Goblin, dared to challenge your leadership. You accepted. With a single strike, you sent him flying 10 meters. Your dominance was unquestioned. Again, the choice loomed. 1. March on the grayscale tribe. 2. Halt. The army is weary. Regroup. You refused to stop. Victory demanded momentum. The empty den. You stormed the grayscale territory, only to find it deserted. The enemy had fled. Terrified by your campaign of extermination, the grayscales had abandoned their lands and vanished, their tracks ending at a riverbank. You stood alone in the misted swamp, victorious but unfinished. Still, you returned in triumph. You ruled the northern swamp. You were now the king. Reign of order. You imposed the 12-tax system, demanding 2/10 of the white-scale tribe's population be rotated annually as laborers. The losses of war were replenished through your captured lizard women, and the goblin bloodlines flourished. To sustain your growing people, you taught farming to the lizard folk. The swamp transformed into a teeming fishery, rich and abundant. But peace was brief. Your hunting parties clashed with a pigmen tribe, provoking a massive counterattack. New choices arose. 1. Launch a preemptive strike. 2. Dig in and build wooden forts. 3. Abandon the breeding grounds and hide. I don't need defense. I need domination, you muttered. You chose to strike. Your goblin army met the pigmen in the shadowed forest. After fierce battle, they retreated. But just as you prepared to pursue, disaster struck. The betrayal. Scouts from the swamp brought grim news. The grayscale tribe had returned, backed by an overwhelming force. The white-scale tribe had surrendered. Bai Ling betrayed you. She had revealed your secret, the goblin's ability to forge iron tools. The next decision was harder than any before. 1. Finish off the pigmen tribe. 2. Return to face the lizardmen army. 3. Retreat and fortify. You couldn't afford to fight a war on 2 fronts. Leaving the swamp to the enemy would be suicide. You returned to confront them. But by the time you arrived, the lizardmen had vanished again, retreating to the river's edge. The white-scale tribe was lost. Frustrated, you turned east to finish the pigmen tribe, only to find their land abandoned too. That's when the trap closed. The end of a tyrant. One morning, 2 armies emerged like shadows from the fog. From the swamp, the lizardmen, their ranks bolstered by your former allies. From the east, a pigmen horde, massive and enraged. You and your loyal friend Benben were surrounded, outnumbered, outmaneuvered. You fought until your strength failed. Benben fell first, broken and bleeding. You held your ground as long as you could, but exhaustion claimed you. Then came Gobuda. Once your subject, now your usurper. He cut off your head and offered it to Gobu Ba, who devoured both your skull and your betrayer. Your reign ended not in glory, but in futility. You were a footnote, your ambition feeding the rise of two barbarian tribes. Simulation end. Score 60. Choose your reward. 1. Spend 5 points to gain +1 level. 2. Spend 5 points for +5 attribute points. 3. Spend 10 points to increase charm by +1. 4. Spend 10 points to upgrade Windblade by +1. Level up, you muttered. I need to keep up. 10 points consumed. Level increased by +2. Additional 50 points consumed. Level increased by +5. Current level, 15. Figures. After level 10, everything costs more. You groaned just before the pain hit. The next evolution had begun. The sound of popping joints echoed by the riverside as Li Meng's body twisted and reshaped under the pressure of rapid evolution. His sinewy goblin frame swelled with a crack, splitting apart the crude animal hide that clung to him. Flesh bulged with newfound power. Bones stretched, muscles coiled like steel cables. Nearby, Benben blinked in awe, tilting his massive head as he watched the transformation. His boss, so small before, was changing before his eyes. Li Meng's height surged from 1.7 to nearly 1.8 meters, but it wasn't just size. His once lean build thickened with raw power. His form now radiated the presence of a true predator. Ah, he gasped, the pain of metamorphosis fading as he collapsed onto a flat stone, panting. Steam rose from his back. He was soaked in sweat. With a thought, the character panel shimmered into view. Name: Goblin. Race: Goblin. Level: 15. Strength: 175. Defense: 159. Agility: 91. Magic: 86. Charm: 0. Luck: 11. Skills: Devour. Chance to gain a magical beast's abilities upon consumption. Steel muscles and iron bones. LV. 4 plus 80 strength, plus 80 defense, plus 20 agility. Windblade, LV1. Body regeneration, LV1. His attributes had soared. The bonuses from leveling were monstrous, each stat surging by 30 to 40 points. It was clear now, the stronger your base stats, the greater the growth per level. Perhaps skills played a part too. The more gifted a goblin, the more dramatic the evolution. Li Meng grinned. So this is what real power feels like. A rustling of bushes signaled Gobu G's return, arms full of firewood. He froze mid-step, eyes bulging at the towering goblin beside the river. "B-Boss, is that you?" he stammered, sensing the familiar aura despite the intimidating frame. Li Meng flexed his arm and smiled. "Yes, I've evolved." The firewood clattered to the ground. Gobu Gu rushed forward and dropped to his knees, pressing his lips to Li Meng's foot. "Boss, you're incredible." Days of fire and iron. The next few days passed in a blur of flame and sweat. Li Meng oversaw the goblin workforce like a silent overseer. Day by day, they built the foundation of an empire. Day 1. Gather materials. Dry wood for fuel, clay for a furnace, and iron or scavenge from the surrounding hills. Day 2. Construct charcoal pits. Shape the base of the blast furnace. Day 3. Tear it down. Rebuild it stronger. At Li Meng's orders, they raised a 5-meter-tall furnace, tall, thick, and capable of real heat. Day 4. Flames danced and molten metal flowed. Cheers echoed from the cave's underground riverbank. Goblins leapt, shouted, and watched molten iron spill into molds. Primitive but effective tools took shape: spearheads, arrowheads, crude plates. Steel could wait. For now, pig iron would serve. And Li Meng honored his promise. "From tomorrow on," he announced, "those who labored shall return to the tribe, with 1 day of mating rites." The goblins exploded with joy. The forest hunt. The next morning, Li Ming and Bin left the cave in silence. Rather than return directly to the tribe, they roamed the forest. Li Ming sought hardwood, tough, flexible, resistant. Bin smashed that tree. The ogre stepped forward and delivered a slap that echoed like thunder. The sapling split in two. Li Ming examined the wood. Too soft, he muttered, tossing it aside. They wandered deeper. On the fourth day, he found it. A twisted tree with dense bark and springy limbs. Even the branches resisted flexing. This is it, Li Ming whispered, gripping a branch. Bin needed no order. With a grunt, he hugged the tree and ripped it from the earth, roots and all. By afternoon, they returned to the tribe. Homecoming. Boss. The boss is back. The tribe stirred with excitement. Goblins rushed out of half-finished wooden buildings, pointing at the returning figure. But it wasn't just Li Ming who drew their gaze. It was Bin carrying a tree like a trophy. In the 2 weeks Li Ming had been away, the tribe had grown. More huts now dotted the clearing, many styled like breeding rooms. Boss, shouted Gobichong, running over. The first batch of newborns is coming. Li Ming raised an eyebrow. The timing made sense. Goblin gestation lasted barely a month. Ensure they have enough food, he said. We need them strong. Already prepared, boss. Chong beamed. A new age. Back inside his workshop hut, Li Ming carved wood obsessively. Shavings covered the floor. Rough prototypes of crossbows lay scattered. Unlike bows, crossbows didn't require finesse, just tension and a trigger. Perfect for goblins. On the third day of his return, the first newborns arrived. Boss! Gobita burst into the hut, panting. They're born. Li Ming rose, brushing off his hands, and followed him. At the nursery hut, a simple fenced-off space contained over a dozen wriggling, chirping newborns. Tiny, barely the size of puppies, yet fierce and alert. Already, goblins were carrying 2 apiece, moving them to safety. For goblins, the first instinct was survival. A hungry goblin would eat anything, even its own mother. Li Ming looked down at the children, then toward the sky, his heart heavy with purpose. They weren't just offspring. They were the future.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Boss! The goblins froze when they saw their leader at the door, walking towards them. They dared not move forward and lingered outside the wooden hut. Wow! The little goblins in their hands kept struggling, crying out fiercely. The adult goblins held them by the necks, making it impossible for them to break free no matter how hard they struggled, leaving them angrily wailing. Li Ming stepped aside, signaling them to continue. Only then did the goblins outside the hut quickly step forward and toss the little goblins inside. The newborn goblins were still wet, and the strong scent of the newborns stimulated the little goblins inside the hut. They looked greedily at the struggling newborns. Born less than an hour apart, the latter became food in the eyes of the former. Behave yourselves, the goblin guarding the door roared, startling the little goblins, who hid in the corner. The newborn goblins couldn't speak yet. It would take 2 weeks before they could communicate seamlessly with adult goblins. This was the magical aspect of goblins. They naturally learned language without being taught, just by reaching a certain age. Li Ming watched for a while from outside, before turning to leave. Back in the wooden hut, Li Ming continued his research on the crossbow. Boss, does this look okay? The next morning, Gobugu entered the hut with a bundle of animal skins. Gobugu knelt before the boss and carefully spread out the bundle. Inside were 3 conical spearheads, each about 20 centimeters long. Though the craftsmanship was rough, they appeared sharp after being polished. Besides the spearheads, there were more than a dozen arrowheads. Li Ming picked up a spearhead and examined it closely. Not bad. Use this as a template to mass-produce spearheads in the future. A furnace of molten iron could produce dozens of spearheads. The production of spearheads was relatively simple. After the molten iron was poured into molds and cooled, a simple forging process made them ready for use. Li Ming glanced around the hut, then walked to a corner. In the corner, he found a straight branch from a hardwood tree, a name he had given to the trees used for making crossbow materials. The branches of the hardwood tree were very straight, ideal for making spear shafts. Li Meng took the branch and sat back down, using a small knife to remove the offshoots. After some processing and sharpening, he inserted the spear shaft into the spear tube, hammering it tightly to form a spear. Goblins were small, so a spear slightly taller than 2 goblin heads was most suitable. Too long, and it would be unwieldy. The longer it was, the clumsier it became. Ordinary goblins were about 1.3 meters tall, and a 1.5 meter spear was ideal. Li Meng stood up and swung the spear a few times, making a whoosh sound. Goba Chong shrank his neck and quickly stepped back a few paces. After playing for a while, Li Meng grew bored and tossed the spear to Gobu Ge. Li Meng kept the arrowheads and handed the rest to Gobu Ge. Make the finished products according to this template. Go ahead. Gobu Chong nodded quickly, holding the spear and the animal skin bundle as he hurriedly ran out of the hut. Meanwhile, Li Meng continued his research on the crossbow inside the hut. System: start the simulated life. Li Meng hadn't forgotten that he still had one chance for a simulated life this month. Consuming 21st tier magic crystals, the simulated life begins. As a transmigrator, you use your knowledge to create the first crossbow. You began to arm your tribe, and your tribe thrived. One of your hunting parties was ambushed by lizardmen while retrieving spider silk in the ghost spider forest, resulting in total annihilation. Traces of the pigmen tribe were discovered in the east, and a pigmen tribe entered your territory. Due to the population surge in the tribe, the pressure on food made you decide to wage war externally. Please make the following choice. 1. Seek revenge on the lizardmen. 2. Annihilate the pigmen tribe that entered your territory. 3. Cross the river and advance to the south bank to expand the hunting grounds. The future of the first stage options hadn't changed at all. Even the options were exactly the same. Last time, Li Meng chose to seek revenge on the lizardmen. This time, he naturally wouldn't choose to seek revenge on the lizardmen again. Choose option 2. Eliminate the pigmen tribe that entered the territory. The pigmen tribe's intrusion into your territory enraged you, and you led the goblin army eastward. The pigmen tribe fled at the sight of you, and you returned empty-handed. Another goblin party sent to the ghost spider forest was ambushed by lizardmen, resulting in total annihilation. The lizardmen's ambush on the hunting party enraged you, and you chose to seek revenge on the lizardmen. One night, you led the goblin army in a surprise attack on the lizardmen tribe. Though the lizardmen were prepared, they couldn't withstand your goblin army, and you successfully wiped out the lizardmen tribe. You killed all the adult lizardmen, leaving only the children and female lizardmen who were shorter than goblins. You discovered an albino female lizardman, the high priestess of the lizardmen tribe. She possessed the skill heart speech, allowing her to communicate with all races. She communicated with you, and you found her beautiful, feeling the urge to mate for the first time. You claimed her, and a month later, you had your own offspring. She was named Bai Ling, and from her, you learned that besides the white scale tribe, there were also the black scale tribe and the gray scale tribe in the swamp. Please make the following choice. 1. Continue the advance, eliminate the black scale tribe. 2. Continue the advance, eliminate the gray scale tribe. 3. Do nothing, lead the army back to the tribe. It seemed to go round and round and come back to the same point. Li Meng rolled his eyes, deep in thought. It seemed that only the third choice in the first stage would affect the future. No, perhaps no matter how he chose, the overall trend of the future wouldn't change. As long as the lizardmen existed in the swamp, they were a threat. Moreover, the intrusion of the pigmen tribe into the territory was an unchangeable fact. In any case, the threats of the lizardmen and the pigmen tribe were unavoidable. Continue the advance, eliminate the gray scale tribe. The gray scale tribe was clearly the guide for the lizardmen army. Perhaps eliminating the gray scale tribe would prevent the appearance of the lizardmen army. You chose to advance on the gray scale tribe. One night, your goblin army launched a surprise attack on the gray scale tribe, and the gray scale tribe was wiped out. You left the children and women to be sent to the white-scale tribe. The war caused many big goblins to evolve into goblin warriors, and you were challenged by Gobu. You accepted the challenge and slapped him 10 meters away, your strength intimidating all the goblins. Please make the following choice. 1. Continue the advance on the black-scale tribe. 2. You feel the goblin army suffered heavy losses and temporarily gave up the attack on the black-scale tribe. Choose option 1. Continue the attack on the black-scale tribe. You chose to continue the attack on the black-scale tribe. One night, you launched a surprise attack on the black-scale tribe, only to find the tribe empty. The destruction of the white-scale tribe and the gray-scale tribe frightened the black-scale tribe, and they had long fled, migrating elsewhere. You decide to pursue the black-scale tribe, but their tracks disappear at the riverbank. You have conquered the northern swamp and become the king of the swamp. You establish a 12-tax system, requiring the white-scale tribe to offer 2/10 of their population annually for rotational labor. With the addition of female lizard men, the population lost in war is quickly replenished. Your tribe thrives, and the population skyrockets. To meet the demand for food, you teach the white-scale tribe farming techniques, turning the swamp into your fishery. Your hunting party ambushes a group of pigmen. The pigmen launch a massive attack. Please choose from the following options. 1. Launch an offensive. 2. Defend passively and build a wooden fortress. 3. Abandon the breeding grounds and hide in the cave. It seems the swamp is not the turning point to change the future. Looking down at the wooden stick in his hand, Li Meng thought to himself, no matter whether he chose to attack the black-scale tribe or the gray-scale tribe first, the result wouldn't change much. Choose option 3, hide in the cave. The other two options at this stage are certain death. The third option might offer a glimmer of hope. You choose to retreat to the cave, avoiding the confrontation. The pigmen army discovers the cave. Your goblin army engages in battle with the pigmen army inside the cave. You achieve victory, and the pigmen army is repelled. You receive news from a swamp that the fleeing black-scale tribe has returned with a massive lizardman army, and the white-scale tribe has surrendered. Bai Ling has betrayed you, and the lizardman army learns of your tribe's ability to forge iron weapons. Please make a choice. 1. Continue eastward to completely annihilate the pigmen tribe. 2. Lead the goblin army to the swamp to confront the lizardman army. 3. Retreat to the tribe and build a wooden fortress to fend off the lizardman attack. As expected, this time the guide is the black-scale tribe. This outcome was within Li Meng's expectations. However, from the future predicted by the simulated life, Li Meng received a piece of information. That is, there are other lizardman tribes in the Goblin Forest. Choose option 3, build a wooden fortress to fend off the lizardman attack. You choose to build a wooden fortress to fend off the lizardman attack. On a certain day, the lizardman army reappears in the swamp. On that day, a massive pigmen army appears in the western forest. Your tribe is caught in a pincer attack by the lizardmen and pigmen. The two different races join forces to besiege the wooden fortress. The fortress is breached, you die, and your tribe is completely annihilated. Simulated life ends. The future line remains unchanged. No score, no reward. An ineffective simulated life. The system's prompt made Li Meng frown slightly. After so many simulated lives, this was the first time he encountered an ineffective one. No reward if the future line doesn't change? Li Meng recalled the past experiences. Could it be that only by being at the turning point and making a choice can the future be changed? If that's the setup, Li Meng could understand. After all, he has 2 chances for simulated life each month. If he uses the 2 chances consecutively, the second simulated life won't change much, because the general trend of the first simulated life is already apparent. No matter how he chooses in the second simulated life, he cannot escape the general trend, unless he is at the turning point and changes the predicted future. Where will the turning point be? Li Meng wasn't too anxious. He would follow the predicted future. He would wait for the turning point to arrive and change the future line predicted by the simulated life. Time passed bit by bit, day by day. Since settling in the northern forest, the tribe has thrived. With the arrival of the first batch of newborns, the tribe finally took its first step forward. On a certain day, more than a month later, in the morning, the tribe was bustling. The chattering of goblins echoed through the forest. In the forest, hundreds of goblins gathered in front of the largest wooden house. The goblin crowd was of various sizes. Most of them were immature young goblins. They were the most boisterous, laughing and playing. Only after being scolded by the adult goblins would they quiet down for a moment. The closest to the wooden house was a group of big goblins. There weren't many of them, only a dozen or so. Their sizes varied, but not by much. At this moment, a robust green-skinned goblin appeared at the door of the wooden house. "The boss is here. Shut up." The appearance of the boss silenced the chaotic noise outside. The young goblins, under the scolding of the adult goblins, lay on the ground with a look of reverence. Looking at the densely packed green-skinned goblins outside, Li Meng grinned. "All big goblins, come in." After throwing out this sentence, Li Meng turned and entered the wooden house. The big goblins outside hurriedly ran into the wooden house. The wooden house was messy, with piles of wood shavings on the floor. In the corner was a large bundle of long spears. "These are newly forged weapons. Take them and distribute them." Hearing this, the big goblins looked greedily at the pile of long spears in the corner. Iron weapons were much stronger than the wooden sticks they held. They had long known that the boss had sent a group of goblins to the cave to forge iron weapons. These days, they often saw some goblins carrying weapons into the boss's wooden house. But without the boss's permission, they could only watch. My. As soon as Li Meng spoke, the big goblins rushed forward to snatch the spears. Seeing the goblin underlings scrambling for the long spears, Li Meng sighed inwardly. These goblins were indeed incredibly stupid. Is this how they distribute weapons when he told them to distribute? "Stop, all of you, stop." Li Meng's shout startled the big goblins in the midst of their scramble. All the big goblins quickly dropped their weapons. Then they bent over, looking at the suddenly angry boss with fear. "Gobuchong, you distribute." Hearing the boss's words, Gobuchong's face lit up with joy. The boss letting him distribute meant that all the weapons here were his. This was great. Gobuchong hurried to the door. "Gobuchong, I told you to distribute, not to take them all for yourself." Li Meng scolded, glaring at Gobuchong at the door. Seeing his expression, Li Meng knew what Gobuchong was thinking. "Fine, I'll do it myself." Helpless, Li Meng walked toward the corner. "You come back, I'll distribute." In the wooden house, Li Meng began distributing weapons to his goblin underlings. Everyone has their share. That's what distribution means, understand? While distributing the weapons, Li Meng lectured his underlings on the principles of sharing. Whether they understood or not didn't matter. They needed to have a sense of sharing. Even if they didn't understand, the goblin underlings still nodded instinctively. "Gobada, you don't need to go out hunting anymore. I have other tasks for you." When it was Gobada's turn, Li Meng skipped him. Gobada stood aside, looking disappointed. Those weapons looked so nice, even just touching them would be great. Soon, each big goblin received dozens of long spears. At their call, the big goblin's underlings swarmed in and took the spears. It wasn't until more than half an hour later that the wooden house quieted down. The goblins outside dispersed as well. The young goblins returned to their nursery to continue eating and drinking. They would only join their father's hunting party when they reached adolescence. Goblins are absolutely loyal to their father, but only if the father's strength surpasses that of his offspring. Once the offspring's strength exceeds the father will be replaced. Goblins don't have the concept of a father. Loyalty stems from bloodline, and only the strongest goblin can become the leader of that bloodline. Adult goblins continue to go out hunting with their hunting party. "Gobada, you don't have your own hunting party yet, do you?" In the wooden house, Gobada quickly nodded. He grinned, looking ingratiating. "Boss, my offspring aren't mature yet." Every underling that evolved into a big goblin was given mating rights by Li Meng. Goblins naturally have a strong reproductive ability, almost guaranteed with each attempt. Li Meng picked up a crossbow placed in the corner and walked out. "Follow me." Gobuda obediently followed behind the boss. The two left the wooden house and entered the forest outside. "Do you know what this is?" Li Meng held the crossbow with both hands, cocking it with one hand. Looking at the weapon in the boss's hand, Gobuda shook his head. He had never seen such a weapon before. Li Meng grinned, took a crossbow bolt from his waist, and loaded it. This was a crossbow Li Meng had spent nearly a month making. Its structure was very simple. It was like a bow combined with a block of wood. "This is a crossbow, a weapon similar to a bow." Gobuda, having never left the goblin forest in his life, naturally didn't know what a crossbow was. Li Meng held the crossbow with both hands, aiming at a large tree 50 meters away. Whoosh! Li Meng pulled the trigger, and the crossbow bolt shot out. In the forest, a flash of black light streaked by. With a thud, the crossbow bolt embedded itself in the tree trunk 50 meters away. The immense force made the tail of the crossbow bolt tremble. Li Meng walked over to the tree 50 meters away. Standing before the tree, Li Meng examined the crossbow bolt embedded in it. He found that the entire combat section of the bolt, along with an arrowhead-length shaft, had penetrated into the tree. "Boss, this is amazing." Gobuda was startled by the power of the weapon in the boss's hand. To be embedded so deeply from such a distance. If it were to hit a body, it would be fatal. Thinking of this, Gobuda looked at the crossbow in the boss's hand with fear. If the boss wanted to shoot him, wouldn't he be doomed? The power is quite impressive. Li Meng was very satisfied with the power of the crossbow. "Let's go, follow me back." With the power of the crossbow confirmed, the next step was to figure out how to mass-produce them. In the following days, Li Meng began teaching Gobuda how to make crossbows. This teaching lasted for more than a month. At first, Gobuda was the only apprentice. As the teaching progressed, dozens of adolescent goblins joined in the wooden house. The sound of wood being carved in the wooden house became even more lively. Every day, a large amount of wood shavings and waste were swept out of the wooden house. This is not bad. On another new day, Li Meng was inspecting the works of the goblin underlings in the wooden house. A large pile of unstrung crossbows was stacked in the corner. The crossbows varied in size, some larger, some smaller. The craftsmanship was extremely crude, but they were still usable. After all, they were handmade, and it was impossible for each crossbow to have uniform specifications. The next step is to acquire spider silk for bowstrings. Without bowstrings, these crossbows were just pieces of wood. Thinking of the ghost spider forest made Li Meng feel a bit of a headache. Stealing spider silk wasn't difficult. As long as they didn't venture deep into the ghost spider forest, there wouldn't be much danger. But the ghost spider forest was too close to the swamp. If the goblin hunting party went to the ghost spider forest, they would inevitably be watched by the lizard men of the white-scale tribe. It seems we can only launch a large-scale operation once. Looking at the mountain of crossbows before him, Li Meng thought to himself, a large-scale operation could effectively minimize losses. It could also allow them to steal enough spider silk at once. Only after eliminating the lizardmen tribe in the swamp could the ghost spider forest become a resource point for the tribe. "Gobuda, go sound the war horn." Gobuda, who was panting and carving wood, looked up at the boss in confusion. Why sound the war horn? Once the war horn sounded, the hunting parties outside would rush back as quickly as possible. Was the boss planning to launch a war? Gobuda grinned, showing an excited expression. He quickly got up and ran to the outer door. Soon after, the deep sound of a horn echoed from a watchtower nearly 50 meters high in the forest. Woo! The long horn sound swept across the land. The hunting parties scattered in various places all looked towards the direction of the tribe almost simultaneously. All the hunting parties abandoned their hunts without hesitation. "Hurry, return to the tribe." In the dim forest, a group of goblins holding long spears was running wildly. At a glance, the entire forest was filled with the sight of green-skinned figures running. Among them, one goblin was particularly tall and strong. It was Gobuchong, urging its underlings as it ran. By the afternoon of the next day, all the hunting parties that had gone out had returned to the tribe. In the tribe, a dense crowd of green-skinned goblins gathered in front of the largest wooden house. Their figures stretched out, covering a large area of the forest. Their numbers were no less than 500, possibly more. Each goblin held a long spear about 1.5 meters in length. It was a forest of spears, quite imposing. Gobuta, Gobuku, Gobuda, your 3 hunting parties will come with me to the Ghost Spider Forest. Gobuchi, Gobuliang, you 2 stay and guard the tribe, protect the breeding grounds. The rest of the hunting parties will continue hunting, responsible for supplying food to the breeding grounds. Since arriving in this forest, more than 2 months had passed. The tribe's population was rapidly approaching the 1,000 mark. Currently, the tribe had 11 hunting parties. The number of goblins in each hunting party varied. Some had 50 or 60 goblins, while others had only 30 or 40. However, as time passed, the number of goblins in the hunting parties would only increase. Standing at the door of the wooden house, Li Meng issued orders to the goblin underlings outside. With a wave of his hand, Li Meng commanded, "Disperse. Gobata Gobu Kugobata, let's move." The goblins gathered in front of the wooden hut, scattered in all directions. Shortly after, Li Meng led 3 hunting parties westward, departing from the tribe. That night, the forest was eerily quiet. In the darkness, small shadows occasionally flitted by. This world had magical beasts as well as ordinary animals. Those with magic crystals were magical beasts. Those without were just regular animals. Suddenly, a rustling sound emerged from the depths of the forest. Before long, the sound grew closer. In a moment, a large group of shadows appeared in the forest. They spread throughout the forest, moving in the same direction. The sound of dry leaves being trampled echoed through the entire forest. Among the shadows, Li Meng was conspicuously present. This time, Li Meng did not bring Benben along. Benben was too large, unsuitable for stealthy operations. Li Meng's goal this time was to collect ghost spider webs. He needed to avoid combat as much as possible. It had been 5 days since they left the tribe. During these 5 days, the hunting party hunted while moving towards the ghost spider forest. The tribe was not far from the ghost spider forest, only about 20 kilometers in a straight line. If they marched quickly, they could reach the ghost spider forest in a day at most. "Boss, it's the smell of the swamp." In the dark, Gobu Chong found the boss by scent. Li Meng also caught the damp and decaying smell in the air. Smelling the swamp meant they were close to the ghost spider forest. Meanwhile, in the forest near the goblin hunting party, several shadows were hiding in the bushes. The noise is loud. It's the smell of goblins. There are too many. Be careful not to be discovered by them. They won't find us. We've smeared mud on ourselves to interfere with the goblin's sense of smell. What should we do now? Abu, once the goblins have gone far, return to the tribe and inform the high priest of the situation here. Hiding in the bushes, Ada stared intently at the figures passing through the forest. His brother had recently died at the hands of the goblins. Though hatred filled his heart, he wouldn't fight those disgusting creatures at night. What about you guys? We'll keep an eye on the goblins to see what they're up to. Understood. Soon, the commotion in the forest gradually faded away. As the goblins left, the forest returned to silence. Suddenly, there was some movement in a patch of bushes. From a shaking bushes, a sturdy figure crawled out. "Be careful. I'm heading back." In the dark, only whispers could be heard in the forest. Abu turned and hurried towards the depths of the forest in the direction of the swamp. Whoosh! After only a few steps, a sharp whoosh sounded. A piercing sound suddenly came from the right side of the forest. With a thud, Abu's running figure suddenly halted. It was as if he had been struck by an invisible force, his body flying sideways. He flew a full 5 meters before tumbling to the ground. Abu! The sudden change elicited a gasp from the bushes. "Don't make a sound." Hiding in the bushes, Ada broke out in a cold sweat. He covered his companion's mouth with his hand. He knew they might have been discovered by the goblins. At this moment, in the depths of the forest on the other side, Li Meng stood with a long spear in hand, his gaze fixed on the depths of the forest. "Boss, it's a lizard man." Behind Li Meng, Gobuchang looked at the boss with admiration. The boss had thrown the long spear over 100 meters, precisely hitting the lizard man. Such a distance, with so many trees in between. Even 10 of him, no, 20 of him couldn't do the same. Li Meng sniffed the air, listening to the sounds in the depths of the forest. There were definitely more lizard men in the forest. Lizard men never acted alone. But their exact location was uncertain to Li Meng. Let's go. After a long while, Li Meng turned and left. Gobuchang cast a mocking glance at the depths of the forest. He grinned and quickly followed the boss. One day, the lizard men would end up as nothing more than dung in his belly. Soon after, the forest returned to complete tranquility. Half an hour later, murmurs arose from the bushes in the depths of the forest. No more noise. Have they left? Not sure, but they should be far away by now. Moments later, several sturdy figures crawled out from the bushes. Ada quickly ran to Abu's body. Ada, how is Abu? He's dead, pierced through by a long weapon. Ada gripped the long spear embedded in Abu's chest and pulled it out forcefully. The spear was immediately extracted from Abu's body. The goblins have discovered us, but they can't pinpoint our location. Let's go head back. Moments later, 3 lizard men hurriedly left the forest, carrying their companion's body. 5 hours later, in the swamp, silver moonlight bathed the land, slightly dispelling the darkness of the swamp. Compared to the forest, the swamp was vast. It was like a great plain dotted with pools of water. 90% of the land was submerged, but the water was shallow, no more than 20 centimeters deep. In the swamp, there was a small island with a cluster of thatched huts. That night, in one of the larger, roofless huts, silver moonlight filtered through the roof, slightly dispelling the darkness inside. High Priest, this is the weapon used by the goblins. Abu knelt and respectfully presented the long spear with both hands. In front of him was a grass mat. Sitting on the mat was a lizard man, entirely snow white. Its pure white scales glistened in the moonlight. Though a lizard, its graceful curves were beautiful and alluring. It extended a delicate hand to take the spear from Abu. The white lizard looked down at the spear, gently caressing the spearhead with its right hand. This is iron, a weapon only humans use. Humans? A flicker of surprise crossed Abu's eyes as he bowed his head. A few years ago, Abu had encountered human adventurers on the other side of the mountain. Though they used iron weapons, they seemed different from those used by the goblins. Though both are iron, the quality is much inferior to that of humans. The white lizard gently set down the spear, its gaze shifting to a lizard man sitting quietly nearby. Elder Adao, we must not let those goblins pollute our swamp. The white lizard's voice was soft, but its eyes were filled with disdain. In this world, no race like the goblins, those monstrous creatures. The sitting lizard man opened its eyes. It stood up and strode out. Rest assured, High Priest, mere goblins are not worth worrying about. Watching the elder's departing figure, the white lizard's face showed a contemplative expression. It looked down at the spear beside it, its face thoughtful. Seeing Elder Adao leave, Ada finally snapped back to reality. He quickly got up and hurried outside. Time ticked by, and the night deepened. Early the next morning, the tribe was bustling with activity. A grand procession of 100 lizard men set off from the tribe, heading east. By afternoon, in a certain forest to the northeast of the swamp, a group of strong, tall figures was running through the dim woods. Each held a large machete, moving in the same direction. Elder, up ahead is the spider forest. Ada approached Elder Adao. This forest was the most familiar to Ada, and they were nearing the spider forest. Elder Adao frowned slightly, a hint of doubt flashing in his eyes. The spider forest was a dead zone. Why would goblins come to such a place? Let's take a look first. Just don't enter the spider forest. Since they were already here, they might as well check it out. In the dim forest, the lizard man team continued onward. 2 hours later, at the edge of the ghost spider forest, the woods were silent and dark. In the damp, blackened forest, nearly 100 lizard men cautiously advanced. The spider webs on the treetops told the lizard men exactly where they were. Each lizard man gripped their machete tightly, warily scanning their surroundings. Elder A. Dow, the goblin tracks disappear here. Even if the goblins were gone, Ada could still smell their lingering scent in the air. The smell was nauseating, yet unforgettable. Elder A. Dow sniffed the air, a hint of confusion in his eyes. The goblins were gone, so why was their scent so strong? It was as if the goblins were right beside them, within reach. Yet there was no sign of goblins in the surrounding forest. At that moment, a scream echoed through the forest. A long spear suddenly shot out from the dead leaves on the ground, piercing a lizardman's abdomen. Walla walla! A horde of goblins shrieked as they crawled out from the dead leaves on the ground. They wielded long spears, excitedly stabbing at the lizard men who hadn't yet reacted. In an instant, the dead leaves danced wildly, and the number of figures in the forest multiplied. The lizard men never expected the goblins to be hiding right under their feet. Some lizard men even stepped on the goblins' bodies. The sudden attack left the lizard men screaming in pain. Dozens of lizard men were impaled by spearheads before they could even react. "It's the goblins, kill them!" A Dow shouted, sidestepping a goblin's thrusting spear. He swung his machete, cutting down a goblin. The not-so-sharp stone blade knocked the goblin to the ground. In the forest, the lizard men who had regained their composure fought back against the goblins. Although the goblins far outnumbered the lizard men, the lizardmen's combat prowess far exceeded that of the goblins. Even with iron weapons, it was difficult for the goblins to win 2-on-1 against a lizard man. They needed a 3-on-1 advantage to have any hope of victory. The fierce battle filled the forest with noise. Get lost! On the battlefield, Elder A. Dow was like a war god. He swung his heavy machete with such precision that it seemed impenetrable. Wherever he went, goblins fell like chopped vegetables. His seemingly tall and clumsy body was surprisingly agile. It was as if he had eyes on the back of his head, able to dodge attacks from behind. Suddenly, a piercing sound came from the right. In the midst of battle, a Dow's expression changed slightly, and he turned to block with his machete. A long spear shot through the air, striking a Dow's machete. Clang! With a metallic clang, a Dow's machete shattered. The spear continued its trajectory, piercing through a Dow's arm. The immense force sent a Dow's sturdy body flying backward. He flew over 10 meters before crashing to the ground. It actually withstood it? Not far away, Li Meng saw the fierce lizard man withstand his attack, a hint of surprise in his eyes. The machete was shattered, and the arm was pierced by the spear. But the spearhead hadn't reached its chest. Gobu Chong quickly handed over a spear. Li Meng grabbed the spear with one hand, his gaze locked on the injured lizard man. He took a step forward and forcefully threw the spear. The spear shot through the air, crossing the battlefield, heading straight for the lizard man, trying to get up. At that moment, a goblin was accidentally knocked into the spear's path by a lizard man. The goblin's body was pierced through. The immense force carried the goblin's body forward, crashing into the lizard man. Though the lizard man was knocked down again, it wasn't seriously harmed. Seeing the boss accidentally injure one of their own, Gobu Chong chuckled awkwardly. Li Meng rolled his eyes. Throwing spears could attack from a distance, but in the chaos of battle, it was easy to hit allies. Retreat! Retreat! On the other side, a Dao struggled to his feet after being hit by the spear. He shouted, ordering a retreat. A Dao knew that if the battle continued, they might be completely wiped out. Looking at the two big goblins watching him from a distance, a hint of fear flashed in a Dao's eyes. The goblin that attacked him was far stronger than him. How was that possible? How did it manage that? That goblin size was only slightly larger than a big goblin. Even a goblin warrior couldn't surpass him in strength. But today, a big goblin's strength far exceeded his. How could Dao not be shocked? Retreat, retreat. Elder A. Dao's order snapped the lizard men out of their battle frenzy. The surviving lizard men quickly turned and ran into the depths of the forest. Elder A. Dao, are you all right? Adao ran to Elder Adao, quickly supporting him as they limped into the forest. A few lizardmen ran over to cover them from behind. Seeing the lizardmen retreat, the goblins cheered excitedly. They chased the lizardmen with greedy expressions. "Come back, don't chase," Li Meng shouted, stopping the goblin squad from pursuing the lizardmen. The boss's order forced the goblins to halt. They could only watch as the lizardmen ran away and disappeared into the forest. "Take all the lizardmen, corpses, and spears. Let's go." It was the boss's order, and the goblins had to obey. Thus, as the lizardmen retreated, Li Meng also hurriedly left with his goblin followers. 2 hours later, in the forest by the riverbank, the eerie sound of chewing echoed through the forest. Nearly 100 goblins were feasting on the lizardmen's bodies. "Boss, we're so strong. Why didn't we kill all those lizardmen?" Sitting on a large rock, Li Meng held a heart, taking bites from it. Gobu Chong gnawed on a lizardman leg. Looking at the lizardman leg in Gobu Chong's hand, Li Meng thought of roasted meat. Li Meng had tried roasting raw meat to eat it cooked. How to put it, goblins could eat cooked meat, but goblin taste buds didn't allow them to enjoy cooked meat. The first time he ate roasted wild boar, Li Meng almost threw up. Li Meng also tried roasting fish, but the result was the same. Deal with them later. For now, the tribe must conserve its strength. The goblins were still too weak. Even with the advantage of a surprise attack and superior numbers, it ended in a 1-for-1 exchange. The lizardmen lost half their numbers, and his goblin underlings also lost nearly half. If the battle continued, even if they defeated the lizardmen, there wouldn't be many goblin underlings left. Gobu Chong glanced at the boss with a look of partial understanding. Why conserve strength? Underlings could always be replenished. Even if all the underlings were gone, they could just be reborn. After feasting on the lizardmen's corpses, the group continued upstream. 2 days later in the afternoon, Li Meng returned to the tribe with a hunting party. Upon returning, Li Meng did only one thing. That was to strengthen the army and quickly teach the goblins how to use the crossbow. Once the goblin underlings were equipped with crossbows, the efficiency of hunting would greatly increase. Their combat power would also multiply several times. Barbarians without armor would have no resistance against crossbows. It was a new day. The weather was great today, with a clear sky and bright sunshine. In the forest where the tribe was located, the big goblins gathered together. "Boss, what is this?" The big goblins curiously examined the crossbows in their hands. "This is a crossbow, a new long-range weapon. Watch carefully." Li Meng held the crossbow in his right hand and pulled the string with his left to load it. "Watch and do the same." The boss's scolding made the big goblins hurriedly fumble to pull the string and load the crossbow. Although Li Meng easily loaded the crossbow, it was different for the big goblins. They gritted their teeth, veins bulging on their arms as they barely managed to load it. "Now load the bolt. Make sure it fits snugly against the chamber wall." Li Meng took a bolt from his waist and loaded it. The big goblins followed suit. "Now, aim at that big tree in the distance." Li Meng held the crossbow with both hands, aiming at a tree 30 meters away. The protrusion below is the trigger. Press it towards your body. With that, Li Meng pulled the trigger. With a whoosh, the bolt shot through the air. Thud! In the next instant, the bolt was deeply embedded in the tree trunk. Whoosh! The big goblins clumsily pulled their triggers. Amidst the sounds of bolts flying, it was unclear where they landed. After all the big goblins pulled their triggers, only one bolt was stuck in the tree trunk. "Now do you know what kind of weapon this is?" The big goblins nodded excitedly. "Boss, you're amazing." "Boss, it requires too much strength. The underlings can't pull it." Li Meng bent down and stepped on the foot loop of the crossbow with his foot. It was made from bark rope, which could be easily repaired with local materials if broken. "Watch carefully. You can also use both hands to pull." Li Meng pulled the bowstring with both hands to load it. The big goblin underlings looked enlightened. If they used both hands, the goblin underlings could also use the crossbow. From today, you must learn how to use the crossbow proficiently and teach your underlings. Faced with the boss's instructions, the big goblins nodded repeatedly. "In a month, I'll conduct random checks. It could be you or your underlings. Anyone who fails will work as a laborer in the Iron Cave for a year. Work as a laborer in the Iron Cave. The big goblins felt a chill and looked down at the crossbows in their hands. Though they liked the environment in the cave, being used as laborers would be torture. The big goblins quickly nodded. I'll have someone deliver the crossbows to your huts later. You figure it out. Li Meng tossed the crossbow to Gobu Chong beside him. Gobu Chong was startled by the boss's action and quickly caught the crossbow. Bin Bin, follow me. Li Meng turned and walked into the depths of the forest. Bin Bin, who had been sitting obediently, stood up upon hearing the boss call. With large and heavy steps, it followed behind the boss. Half an hour later, outside the Iron Cave. Suddenly, the sound of crackling branches echoed in the forest. Moments later, the massive figures of Li Meng and Bin Bin emerged from the forest. In just over 3 months, the Iron Cave had changed significantly. The once narrow cave entrance had been chiseled into a square doorway. As soon as he entered the Iron Cave, Li Meng felt a wave of heat hit him. Looking deeper into the cave, the firelight on the riverbank dispelled the darkness. Everywhere the firelight shone was a scene of bustling activity. The riverbank was dotted with bonfires of various sizes. When one bonfire went out, another would be lit. The bonfires weren't for lighting, but for burning charcoal and iron ore. Besides the bonfires, over a dozen 5-meter-tall blast furnaces stood on the riverbank. The blast furnaces were lined up neatly along the riverbank. Hundreds of goblins were busy on the riverbank. Some were panting as they pulled bellows. Some were piling wood to burn charcoal and iron ore. Others were forging iron tools, the clanging sounds echoing in the cave. Some mischievously touched the furnace wall, yelping in pain and causing their companions to laugh. Others were mining iron ore deeper in the cave with pickaxes. The boss is here. The boss is here. Bin Bin's massive silhouette at the entrance caught the goblins' attention. Someone let out a strange cry, causing all the goblins to look towards the entrance. Gobu Gu, who was busy by the blast furnace, quickly ran to the boss. Boss, why are you here? Gobu Gu asked fawningly as he ran up to Li Meng. The boss hadn't visited the Iron Cave in a long time. Why'd he come today? Li Meng glanced at Bin Bin beside him. I plan to personally forge armor and weapons for Bin Bin. Is the iron rust ready? Over a month ago, Li Meng had sent someone to inform Gobu Gu to prepare some iron rust. Iron rust smelted with pig iron could produce low-carbon steel. Bin Bin was a big guy, and armor and weapons made from pig iron would be too brittle. Boss, everything you asked for is ready. In the following days, Li Meng and Bin Bin were busy. Bin Bin was nearly 5 meters tall, and the armor and weapons it used were gigantic. In the first 5 days, Li Meng did only 2 things. One was measuring Bin Bin's body dimensions. The other was making giant molds from clay. On the 7th day, Li Meng began steelmaking. More than half a month later, in the Iron Cave, a nearly 2-meter-tall, 2-meter-wide anvil stood on the riverbank. The gigantic Bin Bin stood in front of the anvil, wielding a large hammer to strike a glowing red piece of armor. Each strike sent a shower of sparks flying. Here, yes, here. Li Meng held a wooden stick, guiding Bin Bin as it hammered the glowing red armor. Occasionally, he used large iron tongs to clamp the armor for tempering before continuing to forge. On the ground nearby, piles of armor pieces of various sizes were stacked together. Though somewhat rough, they would look completely different after subsequent polishing and finishing. Boss. At that moment, Gobu Gu came running over. He didn't dare get too close and shouted to the boss from about 10 meters away. Li Meng waved his hand to signal to Bin Bin. Bin Bin put down the big iron hammer and plopped down on the ground. After hammering for hours, Bin Bin was feeling a bit tired. Li Meng turned and walked towards Gobu Gu. What's up? Gobu Gu gave a flattering smile. He turned and pointed to the cave entrance. Gobu Chong is outside. He wants to see you, boss. Why is Gobu Chong here? A hint of surprise flashed in Li Meng's eyes, and he murmured to himself. Without thinking much, Li Meng walked towards the cave entrance. Although there had been a skirmish with the lizard men on the edge of the ghost spider forest. But that was just a minor conflict, and it shouldn't have changed the future predicted by the simulated life. Gobuchang coming to find him probably wasn't anything important. Boss. As soon as he stepped out of the iron cave, Li Meng saw Gobuchang outside. Seeing the boss come out, Gobuchang hurriedly approached. Speak, what's the matter? Gobuchang grinned, a flash of greed in his eyes. Boss, there's a lingering scent of lizard men in the forest near the tribe recently. They've come looking for us. The scent of lizard men near the tribe's forest? Li Meng frowned slightly, a contemplative look on his face. It seems the future predicted by the simulated life has indeed changed a bit. In the predicted future, lizard men shouldn't appear in the forest near the tribe at this time. Should I use the simulated life? After thinking it over, Li Meng decided against it. Although the future had changed slightly, the overall situation hadn't shifted. The lizard men discovering the tribe wouldn't alter the course of the future. Gobuchang, how's the crossbow usage coming along? Hearing the boss inquire about the crossbow, Gobuchang nodded repeatedly. Boss, the crossbow is amazing. We can easily hunt prey we couldn't catch before. The amount of food the hunting party brings back is several times what it used to be, and the hunting area is rapidly expanding. It seems the goblin underlings are making good use of the crossbows. Gobuchang's words filled Li Meng with satisfaction. All his effort in creating the crossbows hadn't been in vain. Gobuchang, starting today, your hunting party doesn't need to go out hunting. Your only task is to eliminate the lizard men in the forest between the swamp and the tribe. We can't let the lizard men know our movements. If the lizard men were left unchecked, it might alert them. Fortunately, the tribe isn't very large, with only a few dozen scattered wooden huts. It shouldn't scare the lizard men, allowing the white-scale tribe to escape. The forest outpost is just a breeding ground. The hunting party doesn't usually gather in the tribe. Even after hunting, they don't stay in the tribe. After dropping off the prey, they continue hunting. Gobuchang was delighted and quickly pounded his chest in assurance. Boss, leave it to me. I won't let them get close to the tribe again. The thought of lizard man meat made Gobuchang almost drool. Boss, I'm off then. Gobuchang ran excitedly towards the forest. Li Meng turned and headed back to the iron cave. Back at the tribe, Gobuchang didn't linger. He immediately led the hunting party into the western forest. As the sun set, Gobuchang faced his first night. The dense forest blocked the moonlight, casting the woods into darkness. But the forest wasn't silent, with footsteps and whispers echoing. A group of shadows moved through the forest. Boss, what are we looking for? A goblin underling approached Gobuchang to ask. Since entering the forest during the day, the boss seemed very excited. Hee, don't you think this forest smells like the swamp? The smell of the swamp, the goblin underling sniffed the air. It is a bit, boss, what's up? In the darkness, Gobuchang grinned. Being this far from the swamp, where would the swamp smell come from? The lizard men are too dumb. The goblin underling didn't quite understand what the boss meant. Don't overthink it. You're still a goblin. When you evolve into a big goblin, you'll understand what I mean. Is that so? The goblin underling nodded, half understanding. Crossbowman, draw your strings and load. In the darkness, Gobuchang let out a strange cry. The sound was so piercing that it startled a flock of birds. The goblins scattered throughout the nearby forest paused at the boss's voice. They quickly bent down, stepping on the foot ring rope, drawing the strings and loading. The goblin underlings, holding crossbows, searched forward. Looking into the nearby forest, there were no fewer than 100 goblins. Among them, at least 30 held crossbows. Meanwhile, whispers sounded from the forest not far away. Have we been discovered? Not sure. Maybe it's just a goblin hunting party. They love hunting at night. Behind a large tree, several strong shadows were visible. At a glance, there were 5 of them. The 5 were close enough to hear each other, even when speaking softly. Ako, what should we do? Hide and wait for them to pass. Let's climb a tree and hide. No, goblins can see at night. If we're spotted, we won't be able to escape. Hide in the bushes and don't make a sound. The 5 quickly left the tree and found dense bushes to hide in. As the 5 hid in the bushes, the forest gradually quieted down. But soon, the noise from the east began to sweep in. shadows surged in the forest, accompanied by the rustling of vegetation. "They're close. Don't miss any bushes." The goblins in the forest were busy. They poked their long spears into the dense bushes. "Not good." Aku noticed the goblins poking the bushes with their weapons. He thought it was bad. His heart tightened. Goblins acting this way clearly weren't out hunting. It was obvious the goblins had discovered their presence. They just didn't know where they were, so they entered the forest to search. Aning, Aba, retreat. Aku quietly backed out of the bushes. He lowered his voice as much as possible to notify his nearby companions. "There's a sound over there. It's the lizard men. Shoot them." Even though Aku's voice was low, the nearby goblins heard it. A goblin pointed in the direction of Aku's group and shouted. The nearby crossbowmen quickly pulled their triggers in the direction indicated by the goblin. Whoosh! Crossbow bolts whistled through the air towards the depths of the forest. The next moment, a scream echoed from the forest depths. A lizard man, just crawling out of the bushes, was hit in the back. The crossbow bolt pierced through its body, the arrowhead protruding from its chest. As it tried to stand, it stumbled and fell to the ground, unable to rise. "Go!" The screams of his companions made Aku's heart tighten. He had just heard the sound of something slicing through the air above him. Something had flown over his head, but he didn't know what it was. Over there, kill them." The wails from deep within the forest made the goblins' faces light up with excitement. Crossbowmen gathered from other places hurriedly fired blindly into the depths of the forest. For a moment, the sound of arrows whistling through the air filled the forest. Arrows shot towards the depths of the forest. The sound of arrows hitting tree trunks echoed with a thud in the forest. Another scream came from deep within the forest. Of the 4 fleeing figures, 2 were hit by multiple arrows. The forest was shrouded in darkness. This left their companions clueless about what had happened. They only heard the sound of something rapidly approaching from behind, and they heard something nearby crash into a tree with a thud. "Scatter, scatter!" Aku was lucky he was at the front. His companions behind him took all the attacks for him. With that, Aku leaped into the bushes on the right. The other 2 lizard men quickly scattered to the left and right. The 3 of them scrambled and crawled through the forest in a panic. "Chase them, don't let them escape." Goba shouted excitedly. "Charge, kill them." Lizard men, delicious. The goblins ran wildly through the forest, shouting and yelling. Over 100 goblins began to chase the lizard men. The forest was filled with noise. The goblins' shouts echoed through the forest. "That's right, it's the lizard men." On a grassy area behind some bushes, Gobu found a lizard man corpse. Seeing the body lying on the ground with 2 arrows sticking out of its back, a hint of awe flashed in Gobu eyes. The boss was truly brilliant, to be able to create such powerful weapons. Even though the lizard men were far stronger than them, they could be easily killed by crossbows. That night, the noise in the forest gradually faded away. The next day, in the morning, by the riverbank forest. Run, don't stop. In the dim forest, 3 strong figures ran in a sorry state. Although lizard men had strong legs, they weren't suited for long-distance running. The 3 of them, having fled all night, were already exhausted. Their legs ached terribly, and if they stopped, they would collapse and never get up again. The 3 of them staggered as they ran, exhausted. The commotion from deep within the forest behind them made Aku's scalp tingle. He knew the goblins were still chasing them. Though small, goblins had incredible endurance. Not long after the 3 of them left, a group of goblins appeared in the forest. They moved through the dense vegetation, shouting and yelling. I see them. A goblin climbed onto a large rock. On the rock, it jumped up and down, aiming its crossbow at the fleeing lizard men. Some goblins climbed trees to get a better view. Whoosh! The crossbowmen from high positions pulled the triggers, aiming at the fleeing lizard men. Arrows whistled through the air towards their targets. In the dim forest, black streaks flew past, striking the lizard men. A scream was heard. A lizard man was hit in the thigh by an arrow. The arrow pierced through its thigh, the tip emerging from the other side. The intense pain caused the lizard man to stumble and fall, wailing. Aning! Aku cried out in sorrow. He hurriedly stopped, wanting to run to the fallen Aning. Aku, go quickly! From behind, Abba pushed Aku away. Whoosh! The sound of something slicing through the air came. An arrow hit the back of Abba's head. Abba's head was pierced by the arrow, the tip emerging from his forehead. In Aku's disbelieving gaze, Abba fell to the ground. Aku, go quickly! Don't worry about me. Tell the high priest what we saw. The fallen and wailing Aning shouted at Aku in pain. Ah! Aku let out an angry roar. With a face full of unwillingness, he turned and ran deeper into the forest. At that moment, he forgot the pain in his legs. He kept running, ignoring everything. He was lucky. The sounds of arrows slicing through the air all missed him. Whoosh! However, at that moment, a sound suddenly came from deep within the forest on the right. A black streak flew through the dim space of the forest, hitting Aku's head. With a whoosh, Aku stumbled and fell to the ground. When the body stopped rolling and lay on the ground, an arrow was prominently sticking through his skull. In the depths of the forest on the right, Gobu-chang lowered his crossbow. He was very dissatisfied with his shot. He pouted slightly and tossed the crossbow to a nearby underling. Gobu-chang had intended to hit the lizardman's neck to make it bleed. Unexpectedly, he shot it in the head, killing it instantly. Aku! A chilling wail suddenly echoed through the forest. Seeing Aku lying motionless on the ground not far away, Aning's eyes were filled with rage. It's down! Seeing Aku struggling on the ground, the strong scent of blood excited the goblins. Nearby goblins cheered and charged at Aning. Several goblins surrounded Aning. Looking at the ugly green-skinned creatures around her, Aning's eyes were filled with hatred. Goblin! Aning let out a roar. Her hateful gaze seemed to curse the ugliness around her. But before she could finish her words, the goblins, with greedy faces, stabbed at her with their spears. It's meat, lizard man, meat. What is it saying? Don't know. Amid the goblins' chatter, Aning was stabbed into a bloody mess by the long spears. The goblins that followed swarmed over, fighting to devour Aning. Some goblins rushed to the other two corpses. They frantically gnawed at the bodies. In less than 5 minutes, the 3 corpses were devoured by the goblins. Even the intestines' contents were swallowed by the goblins. All that was left where the bodies fell was a pool of blood. You guys eat fast, didn't leave anything for your boss. When Gobu-chang arrived, hoping for a bite, he found nothing left. Gobu-chang angrily kicked the goblin underlings' butts. The nearby goblins shrank their necks and quickly ran away. Looking at the pool of blood on the ground, exuding a strong scent of blood, Gobu-chang wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth. He glared at the nearby underlings and rolled his eyes. What are you standing around for? Keep moving. If anyone dares to snatch food again, I'll eat them. Facing the boss's gaze, the goblins lowered their heads in fear. Under Gobu-chang's fierce scolding, the goblins in the forest continued to move forward. Whoa! The team had just set out when a long horn sounded suddenly from behind. The sound was very faint, barely audible if one didn't listen carefully. Yet, the goblins walking in the forest all stopped in their tracks. They turned around, looking towards the direction of the tribe with expressions of surprise and uncertainty. Boss, it's the tribe's horn. The sound of the horn brought an excited look to Gobu-chang's face. He knew the boss planned to make a move against the lizard men in the swamp. Meanwhile, in the goblin tribe by the riverbank forest, the war horn on the watchtower sounded again. Li Meng stood at the entrance of the wooden house, squinting at the watchtower not far away. After more than 3 months, it was time to deal with the threat of the swamp lizard men. Glancing sideways, Li Meng looked at Benbin, who was lying outside the wooden house, snoring away. Benbin's massive body was already clad in a set of iron-gray armor. The armor coverage reached 90%. Chest plate, back plate, hand guards, arm guards, leg guards, a total of 26 pieces of armor of various sizes covered the entire body, except for the joints, crotch, and underarms, which are not armored. Every other part was tightly covered by armor. Even that big head was encased in a huge full-cover helmet. How to put it, Binbin seemed to really like that helmet. After all, the ogre's only weakness was its eyes, and the helmet's visor was grid-shaped. Though it would affect vision, it could protect the eyes. Weapons like bows and arrows would find it hard to target Binbin's eyes. Wearing it while sleeping also gave Binbin a sense of security. With this set of armor on, Binbin turned into a big Iron Man. Though it was a bit less than a fully armored knight from Earth's Middle Ages, it wasn't far off. Binbit's weapon was a giant spike club. The club was entirely cast from low-carbon steel. Its length was nearly 5 meters, matching Binbit's height. The club was covered with sharp spikes. If it smashed down, anyone would be turned into meat paste. The armor and spike club together weighed a terrifying 1.3 tons. A weight of over a ton was absolutely unbearable for humans. But for a giant like Binbin, a ton of weight was roughly equivalent to 20 pounds for a human. Time passed bit by bit, and the sound of the war horn brought the hunting party back one after another. On the afternoon of the third day, in the forest of the tribe, in front of the largest wooden house, there was a hubbub. More than 1,000 goblins made the nearby forest crowded. At a glance, a continuous stretch of green-skinned goblins could be seen. Some goblins held long spears, while others carried crossbows. War, lizard men, kill. Standing at the entrance of the wooden house, Li Meng said just one sentence. As soon as he spoke, the goblins showed excited expressions. Kill, kill. The goblins raised their weapons high, shouting loudly. The unified shouts echoed through the forest, startling birds into flight. Move out! Li Meng waved his hand, giving the order to march. Over 1,300 goblins turned and surged towards the western forest. This movement was like a green wave sweeping through the forest. The rumbling footsteps echoed through the forest. According to the future predicted by the simulated life, Li Meng began the campaign against the swamp. Before long, the commotion in the western forest gradually faded away. The next morning, in the riverbank forest, a large group of goblins was marching through the dim forest. Countless green figures filled every corner of the forest. Under such a massive number, even the strongest magical beasts would retreat. Among the green masses was an even larger figure. Wherever it passed, the lower branches and leaves were forcibly pushed aside. Sometimes the branches would break, making a crack sound. Where's the turning point? Ahead of Binbin, Li Meng was walking briskly through the forest. As he walked, he pondered. Whether this campaign against the swamp would encounter a turning point, Li Meng did not know. But if he couldn't find a turning point in the swamp, his future would be in jeopardy. Though the worst outcome wouldn't be death. At worst, he could lead the Goblin brothers and flee the northern forest. As long as they left the northern forest, they wouldn't clash with the Pigmen tribe. Without clashing with the Pigmen tribe, the lizardmen wouldn't join forces with the Pigmen to attack him. Though doing so would be a bit cowardly, at least they could survive. As long as they could live, there was hope for everything. That night, the swamp was quiet. Under the moonlight, the White-Scale tribe was silent. The only visible activity was some lizardmen standing guard on the outer wooden walls. What on earth is happening in the eastern forest? Who knows? We've sent out several scouting teams, and there's still no news. I heard goblins appeared in the eastern forest. Goblins? Just kill those little creatures. Late at night, the lizardmen on the wooden walls gathered to chat. The tribe's atmosphere had been off for the past few months. Once, Elder A. Dow led the tribe's warriors out, and only half returned. And Elder A. Dow was seriously injured. It's not that easy. Goblins in groups are the most troublesome. Just little goblins, I can take on 10. Come on, even Elder A. Dow got hurt, and you think you can? What about me? I've killed at least 20 goblins. While the lizardmen warriors on the wooden walls chatted to pass the time. In the largest thatched house in the tribe, we've sent out 5 scouting teams, and none have returned. Something's wrong. That's obvious. When I came back today, there was movement in the eastern forest. 5 people sat facing each other, cross-legged on grass mats. In a main seat sat a white lizard man. Adow's face was slightly gloomy as he looked around at the elders. This time, the goblins we encountered are different from the ones we know. They have standardized weapons, and they're made of iron. We can't be careless or unprepared. Just goblins, is it necessary to be so tense? So what if the goblins use iron weapons? It doesn't change the fact that goblins are weak. Some lizardman elders still look down on the goblins. They couldn't understand why Elder Adow was so cautious about the weak goblins. Let's quickly deal with those ugly green-skinned creatures, just like we've done before. There's movement in the eastern forest. Could it be goblins? How was that possible? If it were goblins, then the ones we sent. Elder Achi's words were abruptly cut off. The elders' hearts sank, their expressions uncertain. If the movement in the eastern forest and the lack of news from the lizardmen's scouting teams were connected, it would lead to a terrifying conclusion. All the elders turned to look at the high priest in the main seat. Under the moonlight, the high priest was enveloped in a layer of white fluorescence, looking so beautiful and holy. Faced with the elders' gaze, the white lizard man opened its lizard mouth. A gentle voice immediately filled the room. Elder Aaron, send someone to warn the Grayscale tribe and the Black Scale tribe immediately. Tell them that if necessary, the White Scale tribe hopes to receive their help. In this swamp, all lizard men are one, and only by standing together can we survive. Elder Aaron nodded. No one knew what the future held, but being prepared was never a mistake. Meanwhile, on the other side, deep within the swamp, under the moonlight, the overgrown swamp was covered with a layer of silver gauze. In a certain knee-deep water area, a mass of dark figures was wading through the water. The figures spread across a large area of the swamp under the moonlight. The sound of water splashing echoed through the night sky. The water surface surged, forming ripples. Goblins were adept swimmers and could move freely even in the swamp. The commotion caused the swamp crabs living in the swamp to leave their water holes and flee in panic. Their speed was so fast that only a ripple was left on the water surface. In the distant waters, the heads of swamp crocodiles, nearly 5 meters long, emerged. The noise of the goblins wading through the water caught their attention. But the commotion was too great, and the number of prey was too many, making them hesitant to approach. It's the swamp crocodiles. The nearby swamp crocodiles also made the goblins a bit nervous. Swamp crocodiles were second-tier magical beasts, invincible in the water. They usually lived in swamp areas and rivers. On normal days, getting close to the water's edge could lead to an attack by swamp crocodiles. In the past, goblins fetching water by the river were often attacked by swamp crocodiles. The legendary Swamp Crocodile King was a 5th-tier magical beast with magical powers. What are we afraid of? We have crossbows and long spears. Yeah, if the swamp crocodiles dare to come close, we'll stab them to death and shoot them dead. Thinking of the weapons in their hands, the goblins were no longer afraid. Their gazes towards the swamp crocodiles became greedy. Swamp crocodile meat is delicious. Let's go hunting. No way. Tonight the lizardmen are our main course. If we fall behind, the boss will be angry. Exactly, we can't fall behind. Among the goblins wading through the water, Li Meng was also present. Glancing sideways, Li Meng looked at the waters not far to the right. More and more swamp crocodiles were gathering in the waters near the goblin army. If any goblin fell behind, they would become their food. Swamp crocodile, level 32. Strength, 71. Defense, 88. Agility, 68. Magic, 11. The level was high, and the attributes were high too. But magical beasts were still just beasts, unlike humans who could learn magical skills. Without the blessing of magical skills, they were just stronger animals. This was a shallow water area. If the swamp crocodiles really charged, it was uncertain who would win. Compared to the goblins struggling to move forward, Bin seemed much more at ease. Although this was a swamp, the ground beneath the water plants wasn't all mud. Li Meng was walking ahead to scout the path for Bin. Otherwise, he would have been sitting on Bin's shoulder long ago. Binbin also noticed the swamp crocodiles not far away. It opened its mouth, saying something like, "Oh woo, oh woo." Its left hand pointed at the swamp crocodiles not far away. Hearing Binbin's voice from behind, Li Ming turned back with a grin. Seeing Binbin's expression, Li Ming knew it must be talking about something related to food. Li Ming shook his head and pointed towards the darkness ahead. Binbin could only look regretfully at the swamp crocodiles before continuing to follow the leader. 3 hours later, at the White-Scale tribe. The night was deep, and the tribe behind the wooden walls was silent. Even the lizard-man warriors standing guard on the wooden walls were dozing off. Hey, did you hear that? On a section of the wooden wall in the south of the tribe, a dozing lizard-man suddenly woke up. It rubbed its eyes and scanned the swamp outside the gate. It patted its sleepy companion beside it. The awakened companion yawned. It's probably the swamp crabs. Those things love digging holes by the water. The lizard-man warrior scanned the outside waters again. In the moonlight, there are only chaotic water plants and rippling water. When did that mound appear over there? Suddenly, the lizard-man warrior's gaze fixed on a massive shadow. The mound wasn't far from the shore. It was only about 50 meters from the wooden wall. Because it was too far, the lizard-man warrior couldn't see what it was. Let me see. That wasn't there before. The lizard-man warriors on the wooden wall looked at each other. They had been standing guard here for so long. They knew the swamp terrain outside like the back of their hand. They were sure that shadow wasn't there before. Could it be a swamp crocodile? Impossible. Even if a swamp crocodile stood up, it wouldn't be that big. This is strange. A big rock couldn't have fallen from the sky. Maybe it's a pile of water plants that drifted over from somewhere else. Whatever, when daylight comes, whoosh. At that moment, a sudden change occurred in the night sky. A whistling sound was heard, and streaks of black light flashed under the moonlight. The lizard-man warriors observing the swamp outside the gate suddenly froze. Both of their heads were precisely hit by crossbow bolts. Their strong bodies fell one after another, dropping from the wall to the inner side. In the moonlight outside, countless figures emerged from the water plants. Binbin go! A loud shout echoed. The shadow in the water suddenly moved. Binbin stood up, taking giant strides towards the wooden wall. Kill, kill! Meet, meet! The goblins in the darkness shouted loudly. They charged towards the shore alongside Binbin's towering figure. Crossbowmen continuously shot at the lizardmen standing guard on the wooden wall. What happened? Enemy attack, enemy attack. The commotion in the darkness outside startled the lizardman warriors on the wooden wall, but they quickly realized what was happening. For a moment, the lizardman warriors on the wooden wall hurriedly shouted warnings. The shouts of the lizardman warriors on the wooden wall caught the attention of the lizardmen in the tribe. The tribe instantly became noisy, with a large number of lizardmen rushing out of their thatched huts with machetes. To the south, the southern wooden wall is under attack. The lizardman warriors who ran out of the thatched huts rushed towards the southern wooden wall. At this time, outside the southern wooden wall, Binbin had already reached the shore, its massive body charging towards the wooden wall. What is that? It's huge. The wooden wall of the lizardman tribe was only 5 meters high. It was mainly to prevent swamp crabs and swamp crocodiles from entering the tribe. But Binbin's height was almost level with the wooden wall. In the eyes of the lizardmen, Binbin seemed like a giant. It's an ogre. A lizardman warrior recognized Binbin and exclaimed in shock. Binbin, like a mountain, charged towards the wooden wall. Its massive body slammed into the wooden wall with a shoulder bash. Boom! In the dead of night, a loud crash echoed as splinters flew everywhere. The wooden wall was smashed into a large hole by Binbin. Binbin's massive body toppled to the ground, losing balance. As Binbin struggled to get back up, goblins swarmed in through the breach. Walala! The goblins shouted excitedly, rushing in through the gap. It's goblins, it's goblins! The lizardmen who came to support finally realized that it was goblins attacking the tribe. Why would ogres help goblins? Have they been tamed by the goblins? Kill them. Although Binbin's enormous size made the lizardmen show signs of fear, Their homes were right behind them, leaving them no choice but to fight. Hundreds of lizard men wielding large machetes roared and charged at the goblins. Whoosh! Facing the charging lizard men, the goblins screamed and rushed forward. Crossbowmen ran while firing their bolts. With so many lizard men ahead, there was no need to aim. The sound of bolts slicing through the air filled the night sky. Streaks of black light shot towards the charging lizard men. Thud! The lizard man warriors at the front suddenly halted, then fell like a field of cut wheat. The fallen lizard men wailed in pain. The sudden collapse of their comrades startled the lizard men behind them. They only heard the whoosh-whoosh of bolts flying from the front, and then their comrades fell. When they realized why their comrades fell, it was too late. Before even engaging in battle, a large number of lizard men were already dead or injured. In the tribe behind the wooden wall, goblins clashed with lizard men, their cries echoing through the night. Crossbows were deadly in close combat. Once engaged, the crossbow-wielding goblins, supported by their gun-wielding counterparts, mercilessly reaped lizard men lives. At close range, the crossbow bolts were even more lethal. Though many goblins fell onto the lizard men warriors' large machetes, even more lizard men fell to the crossbow bolts. Hundreds of lizard men only held off the goblins for a short while before scattering. The entire battlefield quickly spread deeper into the tribe. A group of goblins rushed into a thatched hut. Inside, a female lizard man clutched her child, hiding in a corner. The goblins spotted her and excitedly charged with their weapons. "What are you doing?" A nearby goblin suddenly slapped the head of his underling. The dazed goblin looked at his leader in confusion. The goblin leader grinned, eyeing the female lizard man greedily. The boss's boss said, "Female lizard men can't be eaten." The slapped goblin's eyes lit up. He raised his weapon again, aiming at the child in the female lizardman's arms. Smack! The goblin leader slapped him again. "Boss, what's wrong now?" Seeing the leader stop him again, the goblin glared angrily. The goblin leader glared back. The boss's boss said, "Male lizard man children shorter than us can't be killed either." "Why? I want meat." The goblin underling complained discontentedly. "No reason. What? You want to challenge the boss's boss?" The goblin underling shrank his neck and quickly shook his head. "Let's go. There's plenty of meat outside." The goblins rushed out of the hut again. In the following time, several more groups of goblins entered the thatched hut. But seeing the lizard man mother and child, none of them struck. Even those dissatisfied with the order left grumbling. "What happened? What's going on?" In front of the largest thatched hut in the tribe's center, the elders hurriedly gathered from their homes at the high priest's door. "It's goblins. Goblins have invaded." A lizard man ran over from the darkness, terrified. More lizard men gathered around the elders from all directions. "Goblins." The elders looked at each other, only surprise in their eyes. Goblins dared to attack their tribe? At that moment, a group of lizard men ran over from the southern darkness, each with a face of terror, as if being chased by something horrifying. "Elders, we can't hold them. The goblins are coming." Adao frowned, stepped forward, and pushed aside the lizard men in front of him. He reached the front of the group, raising his large machete high. "Don't be afraid. Prepare for battle." Adao's shout rallied his companions. Unknowingly, over 200 lizard men had gathered behind Adao. Elder Adao's shout gave the frightened lizard men a slight boost of courage. In the rear, more lizard men gathered from the north. But in the southern darkness, it suddenly fell silent. The previously noisy sounds of battle completely disappeared. Adao stared intently into the darkness, gripping his large machete tightly. Whoosh! Suddenly, a change erupted from the darkness. The dense sound of bolts slicing through the air filled the night sky, flying in from the south. Countless black streaks shot towards the lizard men. Boom! At that moment, the door of the thatched hut behind the lizard men suddenly burst open. A mass of white mist rolled out, sweeping under the lizardmen's feet and spreading into the darkness. A miraculous scene unfolded. 10 meters ahead of the lizard men, the white mist transformed into an ice wall, rising up. The flying crossbow bolts were blocked by the ice wall. With a thud-thud of impacts, ice shards flew everywhere. Bolts embedded themselves in the ice wall, turning its outer surface into a porcupine. It's the high priest. The appearance of the ice wall sparked cheers among the lizardmen. Amidst the lizardmen's cheers, a white figure emerged from the thatched hut. Standing at the doorway, Bai Ling looked solemnly into the darkness. The goblin's massive assault tonight was beyond its expectations. It never imagined the goblins would actively attack the tribe, and with such unstoppable force. A white lizard man who can use magic. Could it be Bai Ling? In the southern darkness, Li Ming observed the white figure at the thatched hut's entrance. Lizard man, level 41, strength 17, defense 14, agility 21, magic 71, ice element control LV4, heart speech LV3. As if realizing something, Li Ming grinned. So you're the turning point. Upon seeing the heart speech skill, Li Ming finally understood everything. Bai Ling was the true culprit behind the tribe's downfall. The heart speech skill allowed Bai Ling to communicate with other barbarians. Bai Ling was the key to the alliance between the Pigmen tribe and the Lizardmen. Binbin, it's your turn. Binbin glanced back at the boss. It raised its left hand and pounded its chest forcefully. A deep and resonant thud echoed. Binbin then turned and dragged its spiked club towards the ice wall. Binbin, Binbin! The goblins behind shouted excitedly. Their voices were so loud, they drowned out all other sounds. Hearing the goblins' unified shouts from the depths of the darkness, the lizard men in front of the straw hut felt a chill in their hearts. How large was the goblin force to create such a loud noise? Standing at the doorway, Bai Ling's heart also sank. At that moment, Bai Ling's pupils contracted. In the darkness before the ice wall, a massive figure slowly emerged. An ogre? Bai Ling exclaimed in surprise. Her body trembled, a hint of panic flashing in her eyes. The lizard men outside the straw hut also looked at the approaching Binbin on the other side of the ice wall with fear. Binbin's massive body was overwhelmingly intimidating. Gobichong. Seeing the frightened look on the lizard man behind the ice wall, Li Ming smiled secretly. The decision to keep Binbin back then was the right one. Without Binbin tonight, no one could handle that female lizard man. Boss, you called me? Gobuchong hurried forward at the boss's call. Bring those female lizard men and the young ones over here. Gobuchong nodded quickly, turned, and left with a group of underlings. By this time, Binbin had already reached the ice wall from the darkness ahead. Stop, ogre! Binbin's body suddenly shuddered in front of the ice wall, as if it had been startled. It turned its big head in confusion, looking around. I'm here, the white lizard man at the door. I'm the one communicating with you. Binbin turned its head to look at Bai Ling at the door of the straw hut. Why help the weak and disgusting goblins attack us? Binbin turned to glance at the boss in the darkness behind it. Then it turned back to Bai Ling with a series of o's. It's just a weak goblin. You could crush it with one slap. You are free. Binbin shook its big head. Roar! It let out a roar at Bai Ling. Raising its spiked club with one hand, it smashed down on the ice wall. Boom! With a loud crash, the ice wall shattered. Wait, I'm not your enemy. The goblins who took your freedom are your enemies. Binbin shook its head and took a big step forward. The voice in its head made Binbin very angry. It didn't like this feeling. Its mind was being invaded. Seeing the ogre unmoved, Bai Ling's face turned cold. Billowing white mist surged from under its feet. It spread from the lizardman's feet, sweeping towards the ogre. The white mist enveloped Binbin's body. Crack! A crisp crack echoed through the night sky. Binbin's advancing form paused. The white mist turned to ice, instantly freezing Binbin. From the appearance of the white mist to Binbin's freezing, it happened in an instant. In less than 2 seconds, with a crack, the ice shattered. The lizard men, who hadn't had time to rejoice, were stunned. Stop! Don't come any closer! Bai Ling's face changed slightly, raising a hand with a wave. More than 10 ice arrows, each about 1 meter long and 3 feet in diameter, appeared out of thin air and shot out. The whistling sound of the arrows pierced the night sky. The ice arrows turned into streaks of white light, instantly crossing 100 meters and striking Benben. At the moment of impact, there was a crack. The ice arrows shattered. One after another, the ice arrows broke apart, sending ice shards flying. Looking at Benben's chest armor, more than 10 dents appeared. Seeing the attack was ineffective, Bai Ling raised her right hand above her head. Above her, white mist appeared and instantly turned to ice. A massive ice spike hovered above Bai Ling's head. It grew larger and thicker at a visible speed. Chilling air spread from the ice spike. Where it passed, the ground was covered in frost. The cold air forced the nearby lizardmen to retreat repeatedly. Go! When the ice spike above her head reached nearly 10 meters in length, Bai Ling shouted. She thrust her right hand forward. The massive ice spike shot out, aiming directly at Benben not far away. Facing the incoming giant ice spike, Benben stopped. Roar! It roared, swinging its spike club with both hands at the incoming ice spike. The strike hit the ice spike precisely. Boom! At the moment the spike club and ice spike made contact, a powerful shockwave exploded. The ice spike shattered, the shockwave spreading in all directions. The immense impact forced Benben's massive body to retreat repeatedly. The straw huts dozens of meters away seemed to be swept by a hurricane. Ice shards mixed in the shockwave directly blew away the straw huts. Even the nearby lizardmen were thrown into disarray. The rolling cold air swept from where Benben stood. Where it passed, the ground was covered in ice crystals, everything frozen. Is it really impossible? Seeing the ogre unharmed, a hint of despair flashed in Bai Ling's eyes. The gap in strength between the two sides was too great, and the ogre had strong magic resistance. The ogre alone could slaughter all the tribe members. Facing the ogre, fleeing was the only chance of survival. But the enemies they faced were not just the ogre. The goblins were also eyeing them from the side. Benben, come back! At this moment, Li Meng's voice came from the darkness behind Benben. Benben, who was approaching the lizard men, stopped. Its massive body turned to look at the darkness behind it. In the eyes of the lizard men, a big goblin slowly emerged from the darkness. Goblin, retreat immediately. This is not a place for you. The voice suddenly appeared in his mind. Li Meng's expression changed slightly. He stopped and looked up at the white lizard man at the door of the straw hut. Clearly a lizard, but it gave off a very seductive vibe. It wasn't an illusion. Its upright figure's curves matched human aesthetics. Although the lizard man had a lizard's head, its body was covered in scales and it had a tail. But aside from the tail and head, the rest of its body was more humanoid. Surrender, or you'll all die. The heart speech skill allowed them to communicate through thoughts. It wasn't a language exchange, but more like telepathy. They could understand each other's thoughts and intentions. Li Meng looked at Bai Ling in front of the straw hut with greed. This white female variant stirred his desire to reproduce. Even with a lizard's head, it wasn't unacceptable. At least it was better than those female magical beasts. Facing Li Meng's greedy gaze, Bai Ling was full of disgust. Dream on, the white scale tribe will never be slaves. Li Meng grinned, turning to wave at the darkness behind him. Footsteps rumbled in the darkness, accompanied by the cries of lizard men, women, and children. A group of female lizard men and lizard man children were driven out of the darkness by the goblins. There were quite a few of them, over 200. This caused a commotion in the darkness. Move quickly, or I'll eat you. A goblin looked greedily at the female lizard men passing by. He picked up a long spear and poked one of them. The lizard man cried out in pain and jumped in fright. This provoked a burst of laughter from the surrounding goblins. The driven female lizard men walked on, holding their children with faces full of fear. The appearance of the women and children caused a stir among the lizard men in front of the thatched huts. All the lizard men looked angrily at the goblins driving the women and children. Facing the angry male lizard men, Li Meng grinned. Then he turned and beckoned to a female lizard man not far behind him. The goblin beside him hurriedly used a long spear to drive the female lizard man over. The female lizard man came to Li Meng with a face full of fear. The ugly goblin in front of her made her legs weak, and she collapsed to the ground. Looking down at the trembling female lizard man in front of him, Li Meng grinned. His eyes turned cold, and he reached out with his right hand, grabbing the female lizard man by the neck. The female lizard man, larger than Li Meng, was lifted up by him. The feeling of suffocation made the female lizard man struggle violently. But her struggles were in vain. Li Meng held the female lizardman's neck, facing the group of lizardmen. "You should know what I want to do." Li Meng's gaze was fixed on Bai Ling at the door of the thatched hut. Bai Ling glared angrily, her whole body trembling. "Damn goblin, go to hell." Several lizardmen couldn't stand seeing their kin being bullied by the goblins like this. The leading lizardman let out a roar. 5 lizardmen suddenly charged at Li Meng. "Come back." Adao was shocked by his kin's reckless actions. He hurriedly tried to stop them, but it was too late. Bin moved, his massive body taking a few steps forward. The giant spike club in his hand swept across. Boom! The giant spike club swept across the 5 lizardmen. At the moment of contact, the sound of bones cracking echoed through the night sky. The 5 lizardmen flew out like discarded rags. They flew dozens of meters and crashed into the thatched hut. One wall of the hut collapsed from the impact. Roar! After finishing this, Bin let out a roar at the lizardmen. The lizardmen looked at the ogre encased in steel with fear and retreated repeatedly. "My patience is limited." Li Meng increased the force in his hand. The female lizardman clutched Li Meng's hand tightly. A large amount of saliva flowed from her mouth. Her neck made a crack sound as if it would be snapped at any moment. Bai Ling gritted her teeth, glaring at Li Meng with hatred. The White Scale tribe would rather die than be slaves. Hearing the final answer from the female lizardman's mouth, Li Meng grinned. He released his grip, letting go of the female lizardman. The lizardman, able to breathe again, knelt on the ground, gasping for air. Li Meng pointed forward, looking at the lizardmen with killing intent. "Kill them all. Leave no one alive." Originally planning to keep these adult lizardmen as labor, now it seemed they all had to be killed. The leader's order made the goblins behind him show expressions of wild joy. "Kill, kill, kill." The ecstatic goblins rushed forward eagerly. The cries and shouts echoed in the sky. The sound of crossbow bolts piercing the air rang out again from the darkness. This made the lizardmen in front of the thatched huts change their expressions slightly. "Stop them, kill." Adao knew that the high priest had clearly been communicating with the goblins just now, and the result was obvious. The talks had broken down. As the lizardmen moved, Bin also moved. Holding the giant spike club, he charged at the lizardmen like a heavy tank. Just as the giant spike club was about to sweep across the army, a mass of white mist rapidly approached from the ground, enveloping Bin's body. The white mist quickly turned to ice, and Bin's body was frozen once again. Bai Ling chose to stop Bin, but couldn't help the lizardmen. The crossbow bolts came through the air, falling like raindrops among the lizardmen. The darkness was filled with wails and screams. Sharp crossbow bolts pierced through the lizardmen's bodies. A large number of lizardmen at the forefront of the charge fell. Adao was strong, a standout among the lizardmen, but he was still flesh and blood. Charging at the forefront, Adao received special attention from the goblin crossbowman. His body was filled with crossbow bolts, turning him into a porcupine. Even so, he staggered forward in the darkness. His legs gave way, and Adao fell to his knees. "Goblin, I will kill." He looked into the depths of the darkness, filled with hatred. In his eyes, countless goblins holding long spears rushed out of the darkness. He wanted to pick up the large machete beside him and continue fighting, but his hands were already immobile, weak and powerless. The goblins ignored him, running past him with loud cries. Before losing consciousness completely, Adao saw and heard. He saw the countless figures continuously rushing out of the darkness. He heard the rumbling footsteps. In the darkness, Adao fell to the ground in despair, yet with a sense of relief. The night was deep, and the tribe under the moonlight was in chaos. Shouts of killing, roars, howls, and wails filled the air. The glow of magic also shone in a part of the tribe. "Don't come any closer. Don't come any closer." In front of the thatched hut, Bai Ling looked at the approaching ogre with despair. The ogre was like a wall blocking her magic. She wanted to help her kin, wanted to use magic to kill the goblins. Even if the White Scale tribe was doomed to perish tonight, she wanted to take the goblins down with them. But her magic was blocked by the ogre's massive body. She couldn't break through the ogre's defense. "High Priest, save me." In the darkness, a lizard man covered in blood crawled to Bai Ling's feet. 2 crossbow bolts were stuck in its back, and blood gushed from its mouth. Having never seen blood before, Bai Ling let out a scream. She turned in fear and ran into the house. The high priest's reaction left a trace of confusion in the eyes of the lizard man lying on the ground. With excessive blood loss, it closed its eyes with one last question. At this moment, in the surrounding darkness, the final slaughter was underway. It seemed like both sides were in a melee, but in reality, the lizard men were quickly being defeated. In the face of the crossbows, the lizard men had no resistance. The darkness also affected the lizard men's vision. Already no match for the goblins, the lizard men were being slaughtered under various factors. It was only a matter of time. It seems lizard men aren't such a strong race after all. In the darkness, Li Meng walked across the battlefield, stepping over corpses. As he walked, Li Meng didn't find a single lizard man with any skills. Though goblins were weak, their potential was clearly higher than that of the lizard men. The lizard men, although possessing high potential, have individuals like Bai Ling who are rare exceptions as mages. Just by looking at Bai Ling, you can tell she's an anomaly. As long as goblins don't die, evolving into goblin warriors is not a problem. Lizard men, on the other hand, don't have such evolution. They can only enhance their strength through physical training and combat skills. Goblins, however, can grow stronger by consuming food. The former has a high baseline, while the latter has a high ceiling. When Li Meng arrived at the straw hut, the sounds of battle were gradually fading to the west. The lizard men around the hut had been completely cleared out. Goblins were sweeping through the entire tribe. Looking at the ground around the hut, layers of lizard men corpses were visible. Oh, Bin, standing in front of the straw hut's door, was troubled. The hut was too small for it to enter. Looking down at the boss who had arrived beside it, Bin pointed at the hut. Li Meng grinned and patted Bin's leg. Bin, leave the rest to me, your boss. Glancing at the open door of the straw hut, Li Meng smirked wickedly. For months, he had been resisting the urge to procreate. Tonight, he decided not to resist his body's primal desires any longer. With that, Li Meng swaggered into the straw hut. He had seen Bai Ling run into the hut earlier. Her mental state had collapsed. Having always held a high position in the tribe, she had never experienced death. How could she know the terror of it? You stay away. The straw hut wasn't dark. Moonlight spilled through the skylight, slightly dispelling the darkness. Inside the hut, Li Meng saw Bai Ling curled up in a corner. "Those young lizard men died because of you. Do you want the women and children to die because of you too?" Bai Ling's face froze, staring blankly at the approaching Li Meng. Li Meng stood before Bai Ling, looking down at her. Reaching out, he grabbed Bai Ling's hand. Then he forcibly pinned Bai Ling beneath him. "Live with this guilt. As long as you live, your people can live too." With a sinister grin, Li Meng tore off the bee skin covering Bai Ling's chest. The twin peaks, resembling those of a human, were exposed to Li Meng's eyes. Li Meng gazed greedily at Bai Ling's chest, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. He had thought lizard men were oviparous, but it seemed he was wrong. Lizard men, like humans, were viviparous. Otherwise, they wouldn't have these 2 peaks. Bai Ling didn't resist, staring blankly at the round moon. She let the ugly goblin tear off her bee skirt. Before long, a suppressed scream echoed in the hut. What followed were grunts and groans. Under the full moon, the swamp was anything but calm tonight. 2 hours later, the noisy White Scale tribe gradually quieted down. In the darkness, the sound of chewing echoed throughout the tribe. After hours of fighting, the goblins were ravenous. Big and small goblins climbed over the corpses, gnawing at them. The thick scent of blood gradually enveloped the entire tribe. The chewing was loudest around the largest straw hut. Many goblins greedily devoured the lizardmen corpses. Not far away, the lizardmen, women, and children watched in terror as the goblins feasted on their kin. Ah! At that moment, a scream suddenly came from the straw hut. This caught the attention of the goblins feasting on the lizardmen corpses nearby. With blood-stained mouths, the goblins looked up at the straw hut. In the goblins' eyes, the boss emerged from the doorway. He held a thick white tail, tearing off a large chunk of meat with a bite. Not bad. The flavor of the meat surprised Li Meng. Bai Ling's tail meat was tastier than any meat he had ever eaten. It was chewy, with a faint milky aroma. Devour skill activated. Acquired skill, heart speech. The system's notification made Li Meng grin. For Bai Ling to survive, she had to offer her tail to him. Otherwise, Bai Ling had no choice but to die. Lizardmen could regenerate their tails, so losing it wouldn't affect Bai Ling much. And at most half a year, Bai Ling's tail would be as good as new. Standing at the doorway, Li Meng continued to savor Bai Ling's tail. Bai Ling's other skill, ice element control, was a valuable asset. If one tail wasn't enough to acquire it, he would wait for Bai Ling to grow a new tail and continue eating. Devour skill activated. Acquired skill, ice element control. Before he had even finished half, the system's notification appeared again. Not bad luck. Here, a reward for you. Seeing how quickly he acquired another skill, Li Meng was in a good mood. He casually tossed the tail to a nearby goblin underling. The nearby goblin underlings scrambled to grab it. Looking up at the full moon, Li Meng squinted. With the lessons from a simulated life predicting the future, Bai Ling couldn't stay in the white-scale tribe. If she stayed, she would 100% betray him. Li Meng didn't believe that after being with him, Bai Ling would fall in love with him. Such things only happened in illogical novels. He was a goblin, a creature despised and hated by all races. Bai Ling would only see it as a disgrace and wait for a chance to take revenge. Who cares? A hint of disdain flashed in Li Meng's eyes as he reached out to grasp the moon. As a goblin, Li Meng wouldn't do anything good in the name of being a goblin. Since goblins were despised by all intelligent races, he would use his body to trample on the pride and dignity of those races. No matter who you are, watch closely. I'll make sure to torment this world. Li Meng grinned wickedly, clenching his fists. His demeanor seemed to challenge some existence. After a while, Li Meng lowered his hands. Glancing sideways, Li Meng looked at Binbin sitting in front of the straw hut. Binbin. The sudden voice in his mind startled Binbin. Binbin's massive body trembled, shaking its big head. It's me, your boss. Binbin looked down at the boss beside it. It extended a huge right hand to point at the boss. Yes, it's me. Boss, how did you get into my head? Binbin knocked on its helmet. I'm not in your head. I'm using magic to communicate with you. Magic? The voice in my head is magic. Yes, it's magic. Oh, I see. Binbin understands. Li Meng sat down at the doorway, moonlight illuminating the two figures, one large and one small. Binbin, do you have any family? I do. Long, long ago, and I lived in a cave, but one day they suddenly disappeared. Suddenly disappeared? Binbin, did you look for them? Boss, why would I look for them? Li Meng's face froze for a moment, and he understood what was going on in his heart. It seems that once an ogre reaches adulthood, the parents separate from their children. Most magical beasts would drive their offspring away, but ogres choose to leave themselves, leaving the nest to their children. Binbin, have you ever encountered other ogres? Binbin nodded its massive head. Then it tapped its helmet with its hand. The boss's magic in its head made it feel a bit uncomfortable. I met them in the mountains. They were fierce. Binbin didn't like them. Them? Was it an ogre family? Don't know. Binbin fought with them. They were strange, turning to stone when seen by something hot from the sky, turning to stone when exposed to sunlight. Li Meng's expression was thoughtful as he looked Binbin up and down. It seems Binbin is an anomaly among ogres. Is it because of the hardened stone skin skill? Time ticked away, and the night deepened. The chewing sounds in the tribe continued for a long time. It wasn't until dawn that the tribe finally quieted down. The goblins, full and satisfied, fell asleep on the spot. As for the female lizard men and the young, they were driven back to the huts. The goblins have a strict hierarchy, and mating rights are held by the higher-ranking goblins. No matter how strong the desire to mate, they would not breed offspring privately. Ordinary goblins don't even have the desire to actively seek mating rights, because the genetic information imprinted in goblins suppresses their mating desires. It's a form of natural selection in biological evolution. The offspring of the higher-ranking ones have greater potential. Only the higher-ranking ones breeding offspring can strengthen the tribe, while ordinary goblins breeding offspring would only weaken the tribe. As the morning light rose in the eastern sky, the traces of last night's battle had disappeared. The tribe was filled only with goblins sleeping soundly. Both the goblin and lizardman corpses had vanished. As for where they went, naturally, they ended up in the goblin stomachs. Looking at the goblins sleeping soundly, each goblin's belly was round and full. What do you plan to do with us? The morning sun was bright, and the tribe was silent. Bai Ling walked weakly out of the hut's door. The pain of her severed tail made her voice tremble. Bai Ling looked with resentment at the goblin sitting at the door, lost in thought as it gazed at the blue sky. Li Meng turned to glance at Bai Ling, who was leaning against the doorframe. Bai Ling was still Bai Ling. Only the tail under her beast skirt was gone. She had lost more than just her tail. There were other things, too. After a glance at Li Meng, she withdrew her gaze and continued to look at the blue sky. I'm a smart goblin. I won't let you become breeding tools, used until death and then eaten. Every 365 sunsets, tribute 10% of your population, half male and half female, and rotate every 365 sunsets. A steady flow is the best way to maximize the value of the lizardmen. Goblins have inherent flaws. To reproduce, they must rely on other races. So, the future tribe must have its own vassal race. What difference does it make? Despair flashed in Bai Ling's eyes. How could she not know the difference? The former is a moment of pain, the latter a lifetime of suffering. The difference is huge. At least you can live, reproduce, and grow stronger, providing us with more females and labor. You demon. Bai Ling's face showed sorrow, feeling despair for the tribe's future. Li Meng turned to look at Bai Ling at the door, grinning fiercely. Goblins are far scarier than demons. With that, Li Meng stood up. Once I wipe out the gray-scale tribe and the black-scale tribe, all the lizard men in the swamp will be under your rule. If you don't want your people to suffer, work well for me, or else you'll only be fit to become food. Saying this, Li Meng patted the armor of Benbin, who was sleeping soundly. Benbin stirred and stood up. Roar! Benbin let out a great roar. The massive roar echoed from the helmet, sweeping across the land. The goblins in the tribe, who were sleeping soundly, were startled awake. Take me with you. I can help you subdue the gray-scale tribe and the black-scale tribe at a lower cost. Li Meng turned to Bai Ling, grinning. Then keep up. I'm looking forward to it. How could Li Meng not see through Bai Ling's little schemes? She merely wanted to preserve the lizardmen's living strength for the future. At noon, under the blazing sun, Li Meng led the goblin army away from the white-scale tribe. With Bai Ling as the guide, the goblin army advanced straight towards the gray-scale tribe. 2 days later, in the swamp, the gray-scale tribe, in a shallow water area, stood a dense cluster of wooden houses on stilts. The endless water surrounding the tribe provided an extremely open view. Due to the geographical environment, the gray-scale tribe had not built wooden walls to protect the tribe. As the afternoon approached, in the largest wooden house of the tribe, Gray-scale Chief, the goblin army is attacking. The white-scale tribe's stronghold has already been breached. This sudden news left the elders in the wooden house with astonished expressions. The white-scale tribe's population was close to 1,000, and its strength was not weak among the 3 tribes. Moreover, with Bai Ling the high priest holding the fort, how could it be breached by mere goblins? The elders kneeling in the wooden house looked at each other in disbelief. The gray-scale chief sat expressionless, looking at the lizard man who came to warn them. Nonsense, the white-scale tribe has by Ling the high priest. How come your goblins shake them? Grayscale found it hard to believe that the white-scale tribe could be breached by goblins. He had witnessed the powerful magic possessed by Ling, the high priest. How could mere goblins be a match for Ling, the high priest? The high priest could easily wipe out hundreds of goblins with a single spell. Seeing the Grayscale chief's disbelief, the lizard man from the white-scale tribe became anxious. It quickly knelt on the ground. Grayscale chief, every word I say is true. When I left the tribe, the outer wooden walls had already been breached. The high priest sent me to the Grayscale tribe and the Blackscale tribe to issue a warning. Could it be true? The White-scale tribe, with Ling the high priest, was breached by goblins? Looking at the lizard man kneeling on the ground, Grayscale's expression changed. The other elders were also filled with doubt and uncertainty. If the White-scale tribe was indeed breached by goblins, then how powerful must the invading goblin army in the swamp be? Chief, something bad has happened. At this moment, a lizard man rushed in. It's the goblins. The goblin army is attacking. The lizard man who ran into the wooden house reported loudly, panic-stricken. What? How was that possible so soon? The people from the white-scale tribe had just arrived, and the goblin army appeared. At this moment, everyone in the wooden house realized the gravity of the situation. The goblin army's attack meant that the white-scale tribe was finished. Grayscale stood up and strode outside. Inform all the tribe members to follow me and face the enemy. Meanwhile, in the vast waters to the east of the tribe, under the blazing sun, a dense mass of green-skinned figures waded through the water. Their numbers were so great that they covered a large area of the water. Among the many smaller green figures was an even larger figure. It moved through the water like a mountain. Wherever it passed, water splashed everywhere. On its shoulders sat two figures, one on the left and one on the right. One was Li Meng, and the other was Ling. Sitting on Bin's shoulder, Li Meng gazed into the distance. In that direction, wooden houses stood on the water surface. The scene of water and sky blending together was quite spectacular. This Grayscale tribe sure knows how to pick a location. The surrounding waters were clear, and the depth was no more than a meter. Anything approaching could be spotted from afar. As an amphibious intelligent species, this environment was more conducive to lizardman combat. At this moment, there was movement within the tribe. A swarm of lizardmen rushed out of the tribe. With a fierce dive, they plunged into the deeper waters like dumplings. Ripples spread across the water's surface, heading towards the goblin army. Stop! Li Meng shouted from Bin's shoulder. The waiting goblin army came to a halt. The rippling water made it difficult for the goblins to stand steady. How did I defeat the Grayscale tribe? Li Meng thought to himself as he looked at the goblin underlings struggling to stand in the water. In this environment, the crossbow was of little use. The lizardman's agility in water far surpassed that of the goblins. Fighting the lizardmen in water, his goblin army couldn't possibly win. Even if they could win, their losses would be significant. Conquering the last Blackscale tribe would be impossible. With a leap, Li Meng jumped off Bin's shoulder. Just as he was about to fall into the water, white mist surged beneath his feet, and the water surface quickly froze. Li Meng ran forward on the water surface. Wherever he passed, the water beneath his feet froze. This scene left Ling, sitting on Bin's shoulder, in disbelief. How is this possible? She exclaimed in shock. A goblin could use ice magic like her? The goblins looked at their leader running on the water with astonishment. The leader could use magic? Li Meng reached the front of the group, extended his right hand, palm outward. Freeze! Billowing white mist surged forward, spreading to the sides. Wherever the white mist passed, the water's surface quickly froze. In no time, a massive ice sheet appeared in front of the goblin army. The white mist gradually dissipated after spreading several hundred meters. Magic is indeed useful. Li Meng was very satisfied as he looked at the vast ice sheet before him. Now Li Meng understood why he could defeat the Grayscale tribe. In the simulated life's prediction, he also gained the skill of ice element control from Bai Ling. However, the future predicted by the simulated life did not explicitly state this. Onto the ice, prepare for battle. Li Ming climbed onto the ice and shouted. The appearance of the ice sheet excited the goblins. All the goblins looked at their leader on the ice with reverence. Goblin, Goblin. Someone shouted, and all the goblins climbed onto the ice, chanting Goblin. The appearance of the ice also startled the approaching lizard men. The lizard men, originally charging underwater, stopped. The lizard men, rising from the water, looked at the distant ice sheet with suspicion. This is ice magic. Why would Bai Ling, the high priest, help the goblins? It's the high priest Bai Ling. I saw her. She's there. What is that huge thing? Binbin's massive figure was quite conspicuous. Though distant, many lizard men saw the high priest Bai Ling sitting on the giant's shoulder. The white scale armor of the high priest Bai Ling was too eye-catching. It was recognizable at a glance. An ogre? How could an ogre be with the goblins? Damn it, the high priest Bai Ling has been coerced. Many lizard men realized what had happened and began to discuss. They understood what was going on. The goblins must have coerced the high priest Bai Ling. That's why the high priest Bai Ling had to help the goblins. Damn goblins! Grayscale, like the rest of the tribe, watched the goblins climbing onto the ice from a distance. The high priest Bai Ling being held captive made him angrily slap the water. Chief, what should we do now? A group of elders approached Grayscale. Charge forward and rescue the high priest Bai Ling. A lizard man elder clenched his fists, his gaze fixed on the white figure on the giant's shoulder. The high priest Bai Ling was the dream lover of all male lizard men. Almost all the elders had pursued the high priest Bai Ling in their youth. Though they failed, the high priest Bai Ling belonged to all lizard men, not just one. No, if I'm not mistaken, the giant under the high priest Bai Ling is an ogre. Grayscale's words left the elders stunned. An ogre? How? How is that possible? No wonder the high priest Bai Ling was captured. If it's an ogre, it makes sense. Ogres had strong anti-magic abilities. Magic had little effect on ogres. The only weakness of an ogre was its eyes, vulnerable to human arrows. By now, all the goblins had climbed onto the ice. Bai Ling, it's your turn. Li Ming glanced at Bai Ling beside him. Bai Ling walked forward expressionlessly. Without a tail, Bai Ling's back looked more human. Her swaying waist and hips were alluringly seductive. Strange, how can a lizard man be so sexy? Bai Ling's graceful figure made Li Ming wonder if he had some perverse fetish. It's the high priest Bai Ling. She's coming over. Bai Ling quickly reached the edge of the ice. Without hesitation, she stepped into the water. As soon as her foot touched the water, it froze. Bai Ling walked on the water's surface, step by step, towards the lizard men. Seeing this, Grayscale dove into the water and swam towards the high priest Bai Ling. Soon, the two stopped about 100 meters from the ice. High priest Bai Ling, your tail. Grayscale, rising from the water, looked furious. The high priest Bai Ling's tail was gone. Though lizard men could regenerate their tails, the pain of losing a tail was unbearable even for male lizard men. Bai Ling shook her head, looking calmly at the Grayscale chief in the water. Chief Grayscale, surrender. About 100 meters from the ice, the two conversed about something unknown. In the water, Grayscale shook his head and slapped the water, occasionally casting a vengeful glance at the goblins on the ice. The future should have changed, right? Watching the two people conversing not far away, Li Ming muttered to himself. System, start the simulated life. With nothing else to do, he decided to use this month's simulated life attempt. Simulated life begins. You lead the Goblin army to advance on the Grayscale tribe. Persuaded by Bai Ling, the Grayscale tribe chooses to surrender to you and is willing to act as an envoy to convince the Blackscale tribe to submit to you. The Blackscale tribe submits to you, and you successfully conquer the swamp. You lead the Goblin army back to the tribe with the spoils of war. Your tribe thrives, and the hunting area expands explosively. Bai Ling gives birth, and you have offspring with your bloodline. One day, A pigman tribe appears in the eastern forest, and you choose to ignore them. One day, a person in a black robe, whose face is indistinguishable, appears in the tribe and finds you. You obtain a sacrificial disc to summon the barbarian god from the black-robed person. Please make the following choice. 1. To gain powerful strength, you choose to summon the barbarian god. 2. You decide to seal the barbarian god sacrificial disc. Maybe it will be useful later. 3. As soon as the black-robed person leaves, you smash the barbarian god sacrificial disc. Barbarian god? A trace of doubt flashed in Li Meng's eyes, and he muttered to himself, "What is this thing? Could it be some kind of summoning magic?" Choose 3. Something summoned that is related to a god must be ominous. Li Meng wouldn't go for something that obviously has issues. Compared to the second option, Li Meng preferred the third one. You destroyed the barbarian god sacrificial disc. A large number of pigmen are discovered in the eastern forest, and you choose to retreat. Goblins are spotted on the southern shore. A lizardman army from the west arrives at the swamp. The lizardman tribe in the swamp initiates a rebellion on the day of rotation, and Bai Ling betrays you. The lizardman army leaves the swamp and advances on your tribe. You lead the goblin army to confront the lizardman army, encountering them in the eastern forest. You achieve victory, with less than 1/10 of the lizardmen surviving. You lead the goblin cavalry to catch up with Bai Ling and capture her. You lead the goblin army to advance on Black Mountain Swamp. The Black Mountain tribe summons the barbarian god Aqua. Black Mountain Swamp is polluted by the barbarian god, becoming the Great Wasteland, and all life is refined into wasteland slaves. You choose to retreat and lead the goblin army back to the tribe. 3-year limit reached. As a transmigrator and a goblin, you cautiously and gradually strengthen your tribe, and your efforts have paid off. Your life is just beginning. Simulated life ends. Score 100. Please choose the following reward. 1. Consume 10 score levels plus 1. 2. Consume 1 score attribute plus 1. 3. Consume 10 score charm plus 1. 4. Consume 10 score steel muscles and iron bones skill level plus 1. 5. Consume 10 score wind blade skill level plus 1. Great Wasteland. Wasteland slaves? For some reason, the future predicted by the simulated life gave Li Meng a chill down his spine. The appearance of the black robe, the sacrificial disc that can summon the barbarian god, the Great Wasteland, wasteland slaves. Everything happened too suddenly. It was as if a bomb suddenly dropped from the sky on an otherwise peaceful day. That thunderous explosion caused everything to change drastically. Also, Li Meng didn't expect the simulated life could only predict the future within 3 years. Choose 4. Consume 60 score. Steel muscles and iron bones skill level plus 6. Steel muscles and iron bones skill has reached max level, advancing to steel skin. Consume 40 score. Steel skin skill level plus 2. Your attributes have increased. Li Meng suddenly let out a muffled groan, his face showing pain. His hands tightly gripped his thighs, veins bulging on the back of his hands. His whole body crackled with sound. The intense pain made Li Meng feel as if the bones in his body were being crushed. The severe pain lasted for several minutes before gradually subsiding. When the pain disappeared, Li Meng was drenched in sweat. "Boss, are you okay?" Goblin, standing behind Li Meng, took a fearful step back. For some reason, Goblin felt that the boss in front of him had changed. Just standing behind the boss, he felt a suffocating pressure. His legs were trembling, and he felt like kneeling at the boss's feet. "I'm fine." Taking a deep breath, Li Meng focused his thoughts. Name, Goblin. Race, Goblin. Level, 15. Strength, 775. Defense, 759. Agility, 291. Magic, 86. Charm, 0. Luck, 11. Devour. Devouring the flesh of magical beasts has a chance to acquire their skills. Steel Skin, LV2. Strength plus 600. Defense plus 600. Agility plus 200. Windblade, LV1. Body Regeneration, LV1. Heart speech. LV1. Ice element control. LV1. My God, what happened? The terrifying attributes left Li Ming dumbfounded. He never expected the attribute bonuses after skill advancement to be so ridiculously high. His current attributes have completely surpassed Benben. Although he looks small, his body contains astonishing power. This feeling is amazing. Li Ming excitedly clenched his right fist. From this moment on, Goblin was no longer a threat to him. He could crush Goblin with just one finger. Boss, she's back. At this moment, Bai Ling finished her negotiations with the lizard man. She turned and walked over. Looking at Bai Ling approaching, Li Ming's face was filled with greed. There's still time. There should be time. With his current powerful physical attributes, mating with Bai Ling could produce offspring with even greater potential. Facing Li Ming's greedy and lecherous gaze, Bai Ling frowned slightly. Returning to Li Ming, a trace of disgust flashed in Bai Ling's eyes. She slightly lowered her head and reported the negotiation details with the Grayscale tribe leader to Li Ming. The Grayscale tribe is willing to submit to you, willing to tribute 2/10 of their population, and willing to act as envoys to convince the Black Scale tribe to submit to you. But the Grayscale tribe has 2 demands. 2 demands? Li Ming glanced at the lizard man standing in the water not far away. Facing Li Ming's gaze, the Grayscale tribe leader lowered his head in humiliation. This was a gesture of submission. Speak, what are the demands? Seeing this, Li Ming turned back to Bai Ling in front of him. First, the goblins must ensure the safety of the tribute population and not treat the lizard men as food. Second, there must be no goblins in the tribe. All right, I agree. Li Ming agreed to the 2 demands of the Grayscale tribe without hesitation. Bai Ling, tell them to send the tribute population to the White Scale tribe in 3 days. Bai Ling nodded and turned to walk towards the Grayscale tribe leader. The 2 exchanged a few more words. Soon after, the lizard man turned and dove into the water, swimming away into the distance. Gobichang retreat. Taking 2 steps forward, Li Ming grabbed Bai Ling's hand as she returned to his side. He pulled her onto Benben's hand. Benben stood up and lifted the leader onto his shoulder. Sitting on Benben's shoulder, Li Ming forcibly pulled Bai Ling into his embrace. His hands tightly grasped Bai Ling's waist and hips. What are you trying to do? Bai Ling looked panicked, struggling. But to her despair, she couldn't move. The hands on her waist and hips held her body firmly in place. No, please, not here. The strange sensation beneath her beast skirt made Bai Ling realize what the goblin in front of her intended to do. Bai Ling's face showed a pleading expression. Her kind was watching not far away. As the high priest, how could she endure such humiliation? Withdraw. Return to the White Scale tribe immediately. Under Gobu Chang's command, the goblins on the ice began to turn and retreat. Watching the leader bullying the female lizard man on Benben's shoulder, the goblins looked on with greed. Some goblins even drooled. Ah! A sharp scream echoed as Bai Ling, sitting astride Li Ming's lap, was filled with resentment. Li Ming buried his ugly head into Bai Ling's soft bosom. How could this be, damn it, hateful? The lizard men not far away witnessed everything. Grayscale let out a mournful cry, filled with rage. His face twisted with hatred, reaching its peak. The surrounding elders clenched their fists, their bodies trembling. Their high priest had become a breeding tool for the goblins. Damn it, damn it. Many lizard men lowered their heads, not daring to look directly. Some lizard men slapped the water in frustration, venting their anger. Leader, let's fight them. Yes, fight them. The lizard men, filled with righteous indignation, looked towards the Grayscale tribe leader. Faced with the angry and expectant eyes of the young tribe members, Grayscale hesitated. Finally, his face darkened, and he expressionlessly waded towards the direction of the tribe. Everyone returned. Leader, some lizard men wanted to say more, but were silenced by Grayscale's glare. The leader's authority made the lizard men reluctantly follow in silence. The elders also hesitated to speak, although they didn't know what the leader and Bai Ling the high priest had discussed. The goblins' retreat gave them a sense of relief. Soon after, in the Grayscale tribe leader's wooden house. What? I don't agree. I absolutely don't agree, leader. You're sending our people to the goblins as breeding tools. The elders looked at the leader in disbelief. They couldn't believe the leader would agree to submit to the goblins. Elder Huigu roared at Grayscale. Grayscale faced the elder's angry eyes with an expressionless face. Do you think the Grayscale tribe is stronger than the Whitescale tribe? Grayscale's question left the elders speechless. Among the three major tribes in the swamp, the Whitescale tribe was the strongest. Not only did they have a large population, but they also had Bai Ling, the high priest. The Whitescale tribe was overrun by the goblins. What do we have to fight them with? Faced with the leader's gaze, the elders lowered their heads. Elder Huigu wanted to say something, but couldn't bring himself to speak. Bai Ling, the high priest, personally told me, in last night's battle, the young and strong of the Whitescale tribe were all killed by the goblins, leaving only women and children. If we want revenge, we must temporarily avoid the edge, pretend to submit to the goblins, and buy time to seek help from the Blackscale tribe. A forced battle will only lead to the same fate as the Whitescale tribe. We will have our revenge, but not now. We must preserve our living strength to prepare for future revenge. Revenge! Grayscale's words made the elders clench their fists. Their eyes were filled with hatred for the goblins. For revenge, they could only humiliate themselves by submitting to the goblins. Leader, the tribe's people might find it hard to accept. Hui Yuan looked worried, knowing how much of a stir this news would cause. Grayscale looked apologetically at his wife, sitting beside him. I will lead by example and become the first batch of tribute. These words caused the elders' expressions to change. Elder Huigu shook his head with a bitter smile. That's all we can do. If we don't become tributes, we can't explain it to the tribe's people. The elders exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. Leader, let us bear this sin together. Faced with the elders' determined gazes, Grayscale felt comforted. If only he became a tribute, the elders would become the target of the tribe's people's resentment. But if both the elders and the leader became tributes, the tribe's people would surely understand their intentions. Soon after, Grayscale led the elders straight towards the direction of the Blackscale tribe. 3 days later, at the Whitescale tribe, it was noon, and the sun shone brightly over the swamp. Compared to the morning's hustle and bustle, the Whitescale tribe was much quieter. Looking into the tribe, many goblins could be seen playing and frolicking on the wooden walls. Behind the wooden walls, the tribe was relatively calm. Early in the morning, nearly half of the hunting party had gone out to hunt. Goblins didn't have the habit of storing food. They ate wherever they went. Goblins didn't consume much either. Once full, they wouldn't be hungry for 3 days. In front of the largest thatched hut in the tribe, Gobichong looked obsequiously at Benbin, who was sitting in front of the door. I want to see the boss. Hearing the noises from inside the hut, a hint of envy flashed in Gobuchong's eyes. Benbin looked down at Gobuchong, just staring. Sensing Benbin's gaze, Gobuchong gave a sheepish smile. He stepped back 2 steps and sat obediently on the ground to wait. Meanwhile, in the corner of the room, 2 figures, one green and one white, were intertwined. Bai Ling was pinned beneath Li Meng, unable to move. Her hands tightly gripped the wooden planks, her eyes filled with only humiliation and hatred. At that moment, Li Meng's body suddenly trembled. Then he collapsed weakly onto Bai Ling. After a while, Li Meng got up from Bai Ling and sat beside her. Li Meng looked down at her belly. Reaching out with his right hand, Li Meng gently caressed Bai Ling's slightly bulging belly. Looks like you're pregnant. Li Meng's voice wasn't loud, but Bai Ling heard it, although Bai Ling couldn't understand the goblin language. Through the heart-speech skill, she knew what the sentence meant. Her body trembled, and a flash of fear appeared in her eyes. Giving birth to a goblin is relatively easy, it won't hurt. The size of a goblin baby is closely related to the size of the mother. If the mother is a groundhog, the goblin born will be very small. This makes it easier for the mother to give birth, preventing the goblin from dying in the womb.